Chapter 251. Qing Mansion. The lights had already illuminated the huge Qing Mansion. As for Qing Yaojin, he was still sitting in the hall. His calloused hands were twirling the words. There were even tears in Qing Yaojin's eyes, which were full of vicissitudes of life. He had been in this position for the whole day. Ever since he saw this calligraphy, he had been staring at it in a daze. He was very grateful that the emperor had once ordered him to learn how to read. If he couldn't learn in half a year, he would have to retire and return to his hometown. Although this was the emperor's angry words at that time. But now that she thought about it, she remembered how crazy the emperor was when he saw her painting that didn't resemble her at all. In half a year, even if he had worked hard to learn, although he couldn't write much, at least he could understand it. At this time, thinking about the emperor's painstaking efforts, Qing Yaojin was now flustered. If anyone dared to take out those things and show them in front of him, he would definitely beat that person up on the spot. Even if it was in the imperial court, he wouldn't hesitate. He thought that he wanted to get rid of the bad reputation of illiteracy. When he received the calligraphy of the Zhang Feng brothers, he was infinitely emotional, but he wouldn't lose his composure. But today he was deeply touched by the calligraphy of the Zhang Feng brothers, written by Du Go. The scenes on the battlefield made Qing Yaojin feel infinitely sad. Most of the brothers who had laughed and cried with him were now buried in the cold soil. Many of them didn't even leave behind a name. But who could remember them? Other than in their dreams, who would remember that they had once sacrificed everything for the great Tang on the battlefield? Erniu, Go Xing Ai, Old Nyo miss you. Are you doing well in that place? Sob. I actually forgot what your real names are. Just you wait, brother, I will go and beg the emperor. I will erect a monument for you. Let the future generations revere you and remember your glorious achievements. While speaking, Qing Yaojin wiped the tears from his face and hurriedly put on his armor to enter the palace. However, he was bumped into by Cheng Chumo, who was walking in. What are you doing? Qing Yaojin was furious. He shouted angrily. Father, I have something to tell you. Cheng Chumo was startled by Qing Yaojin's red eyes and hurriedly said, If you have something to say, then say it. Lao Tzu is going to the palace to settle accounts with the emperor. Qing Yaojin urged impatiently. When Cheng Chumo heard this, his head started spinning. Settle accounts with the emperor? What kind of account was this? Wait, father, I have something to tell you. Today, I went to the tavern again with the crown prince and the others. This time, I discovered a big problem. Hearing this, Qing Yaojin was no longer anxious. He asked, What's the big problem? Cheng Chumo said mysteriously, Today, when I went to the tavern, guess what brother Zhang Feng said? Qing Yaojin was so angry that he slapped Cheng Chumo's forehead. Cheng Chumo shrunk his neck and said calmly, Today, brother Zhang Feng promised to teach us. Moreover, he plans to teach differently for each individual. For me, he plans to teach me the path of heavy cavalry, while Zhang Sunchang's path is to travel 1,000 miles on a single horse and take the head of the defending general with 10,000 troops. Do you know that bastard Wei Shuyu? Damn, brother Zhang Feng is going to teach him the way of assassination. Why didn't he teach me this? When Qing Yaojin heard this, he was shocked. With that bull strength of yours, would you be able to be a light horse? I think brother Zhang Feng's arrangement is good. But this guy still wants you to sign a contract with the army. Qing Yaojin could not understand Zhang Feng. Why was he so determined to let these children join the army? What was the benefit? However, Qing Yaojin believed that the crown prince had told the emperor about this, but the emperor did not object. It could be said that he acquiesced. So, how would the emperor arrange this? What about Du Go, the crown prince, and brother Zhang Feng? Qing Yaojin waved his hand, and instantly, the retired soldiers quickly dispersed. He then closed the door and asked. Cheng Chumo was smart enough to quickly write down Du Go's arrangement. Qing Yaojin was shocked. Was the crown prince planning to hand over all the money in the world to him? Qing Yaojin knew how terrifying a master of mathematics was. This kind of complicated thing was the private collection of the 7 kings of the 5 families. It was also because of this that the 7 kings of the 5 families were able to stand for so many years. If the 7 kings of the 5 families knew about this, even if Du Go was hiding by the emperor's side, the 7 kings of the 5 families would spare no effort to assassinate him. He would rather die than live in dishonor for this kind of thing. Zhang Feng, why did you make such an arrangement? What do you want to do? Cheng Yaojin could not figure it out, but fortunately he did not want to think about it. He knew that Du Ruhui was really troubled now. He asked hurriedly, "What about the crown prince?" Cheng Chumo took a deep breath. At this time, he did not dare to write with ink. He dipped his finger in the water in Cheng Yaojin's teacup and then quickly wrote 2 words on the table. Then he quickly wiped it clean. Cheng Yaojin, on the other hand, was so shocked that his face suddenly changed. "Quickly bring me the old man's armor. The old man wants to enter the palace." Chapter 252. Imperial Palace. In the study of Taiji Palace. It was already nighttime. However, Li Shimin seemed to know that Wei Zheng and the others would definitely come to the palace at night, so he was already seated on the dragon throne waiting for them. He had even informed them that if these people wanted to enter the imperial city, they were not allowed to obstruct the tribulation. He had already made up his mind. If these people did not come, he would not hesitate to use an iron-blooded method that he had not used in a long time to let these people know that this matter was very serious. Tonight was destined to be an eventful night. Just as Li Shimin was drinking his 3rd cup of tea, Xiao Gizi hurried over to report, "Reporting to your majesty, Duke Lu, Duke Zhao, Duke Zheng, and the others are outside requesting an audience." "Summon them." Li Shimin finally let go of the last worry in his heart. He did not want to commit any more killings. Especially now. He did not trust many people in the imperial court, and these people were the ones he valued the most. He was very worried that these people would betray him. However, it seemed that he could now take in the Jinwu guards. With a wave of his hand, a person in the shadows hurriedly left. At this moment, a few people dressed in court attire and holding white jade tablets hurriedly entered the imperial study. Cheng Yaojin even put on the armor that he had not worn for a long time. Furthermore, it was the armor that had accompanied Li Shimin for many years. A smile flashed across Li Shimin's lips when he saw this. He waved his hand to indicate that everyone did not need to be so reserved. "We are very gratified that my beloved official could come tonight. Come. Don't be so courteous. This is not the political announcement hall, so relax a little." At this moment, everyone heaved a deep sigh of relief when they saw the smile on Li Shimin's lips. These people were no longer noobs. It could be said that they were a group of old foxes. After seeing Li Shimin's reaction, everyone complied with Li Shimin's wishes and sat down. "We are very gratified tonight. Being able to see the few of you, this Zhen is really relieved. Previously, when I heard that child Qingqian talk about brother Zhang Feng, we were a bit worried. I also knew that you might come. That's why I've been worried ever since I received the news. What do you think we should do about this?" Li Shimin smiled faintly. Everyone stood up again. At this time, although Li Shimin was expressing his loyalty, everyone was not stupid. The more it was like this, the more they had to be careful. Because often at this time, their heads had already been lifted by the emperor. "Emperor, we are slow-witted, but we also know that this matter is not something that we can decide. Therefore, when we learned of this matter, we immediately locked up our unfilial sons and rushed to the palace to seek an audience with your majesty." As he spoke, everyone knelt down. "Please punish me, your majesty." Regardless of the consequences, if he admitted his guilt now, he could save his life. Sure enough, after Li Shimin heard this, the expression on his face finally relaxed. "My beloved subjects, you may all rise. We have already said that this is not the imperial court. This is a place for us old fellows to chat, so there is no need to be reserved. Servants, come, serve to." As Li Shimin spoke, he stood up and waited for the palace maids to serve tea. He helped everyone up one by one and handed out cups of tea to everyone. At this time, he waved his hand to dismiss the palace maids and the imperial guards who were secretly guarding every corner of the imperial study. Then he said with a smile, "We really don't know what to do about this matter. Official Qing, tell me about Qimo, Chong, and the others. Should we go?" Cheng Yaojin's eyelids twitched imperceptibly. Your Majesty, I am slow-witted. I will listen to whatever you say. If that brat of mine makes your Majesty unhappy, I will go back now and bring him to you. How can you speak like that? When Li Shimin saw that Cheng Yaojin did not accept his words and even said such words, he could only wave his hand to have him sit down. Then he looked at Wei Zheng. Prime Minister Wei, you speak. This matter is giving us a headache. This, Wei Zheng hesitated. Having two outstanding talents in the same family had already crossed the emperor's reverse scale. However, the emperor pitied Wei Shuyu and sent her to the imperial guards. On one hand, it was to give his family a little income, but more importantly, it was to keep an eye on Wei Shuyu. But now, Brother Zhang Feng had given everyone a difficult problem. Wei Zheng gritted his teeth, got up, and knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, this old subject is slow-witted and unknowingly allowed Shuyu to commit such a crime. This subject is willing to accept the punishment and retire to his hometown. This subject is also willing to retire to his hometown and clear his name. Zhang's son Wuji and the others also hurriedly knelt and begged for mercy. Li Shimin shook his head. With his hands behind his back, as if he could not see everyone, he said, Wuji, I remember that when we were about the same age as Chong and the others, we were already famous on the battlefield, right? I remember that at that time, sigh. We are all old. Your Majesty is in the prime of his life. How can you be old? Forget it, forget it. Li Shimin shook his head and said, Everyone, get up. This was a decision I made before. After indicating for everyone to get up, Li Shimin sat in the middle of the crowd and said, I think we should respect Brother Zhang Feng's choice on this matter. After all, if we were thick-skinned back then maybe, but we are all old. It is time for us to contribute to the future of the Tang dynasty. Chapter 253. No one understood the meaning of the emperor's ambiguous words. But at this time, they could only play dumb. Sometimes, people died from talking too much. They died from being smart. At this time, Li Shimin was also satisfied. After achieving his goal, Li Shimin could not help but let go of the last bit of fear in his heart. Since that is the case, then I have decided. Since Brother Zhang Feng is willing to teach all his skills to Cheng Qian and the others, then I will allow it. But when the time comes, I will personally assess how much they have learned from Brother Zhang Feng. If they do not pass, then they will remain the same as they are now. If they have learned well, then I will reward them. But I have a request. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed and hurriedly expressed their thanks. Li Shimin said again, Every day, I must receive their learning progress. Then, Cheng Yaojin, you and the people of the military department will work together to secretly organize what Zhang Feng has taught for me. As for Dugo, Minister Feng, I will have to trouble you. As for Cheng Qian, I will personally organize it. But there is one thing. I do not wish to hear what Cheng Qian has learned outside. In the end, Li Shimin still expressed his worries. He believed that these people would understand. If they didn't, they wouldn't be here tonight. They all stood up and knelt on the ground again. We obey your Majesty's imperial order. All right, get up. Since it's already so late, don't go back tonight. We haven't drunk together in a long time. How about it? Why don't we have the imperial chef make some mutton soup and pair it with Brother Zhang Feng's good wine? Without waiting for anyone to object, Li Shimin said with a chuckle, I know that those little rascals actually sneaked into my yellow forest to hunt a tiger and gave it to Brother Zhang Feng. I also know that the most precious tiger penis was given to an old scholar by that little rascal. Li Shimin seemed to be very angry. It was as if his heart ached. He shook his head and said, Forget it. Tomorrow we'll go and eat tiger meat. That was good stuff. Let's go together then. What could they say? What did he dare to say? He could only nod his head. They had just walked on the edge of life and death. Right now, everyone's backs were drenched in sweat. How could he dare to say anything else? Now that the emperor was in the midst of comprehending, if anyone dared to speak at this time, they would definitely be done for. Not long after, Hunyang Imo was suddenly carried in by a few palace eunuchs. The spicy pepper, the numbing pepper, and the dogwood powder, which he stole from Zhang Feng, instantly filled the imperial study with a spicy sensation that made one unable to blink. Li Shimin seemed to have an appetite. He rubbed his hands and beckoned for everyone to sit down. Then he personally opened a jar of wine and served it to everyone. Then he raised his glass and said, "Everyone has worked hard during this period of time. I have long wanted to treat everyone to a drink, but unfortunately, I never had the time. Tonight, let's have a good drink." While speaking, Li Shimin raised his head and drank the wine in one gulp. After drinking a glass of wine, everyone's nerves gradually relaxed. Li Shimin asked slowly, "By the way, Minister Fong, can you tell me what happened to the cooperative in Chang'an recently? Furthermore, I have a bad premonition." Fong Xianling hurriedly put down his glass and was about to stand up, but Li Shimin waved his hand and motioned him to sit down and talk. "Your Majesty, I have noticed that the Chang'an local government's treasury was less than 30 million taels of silver. But now, including the money lent out and the money deposited, the total amount is 10 million taels of gold. This is a considerable amount, so I think that the matter of Guanlong hasn't started yet. But I also found something wrong in the past 2 days. That is, the goods of all the merchants have been hoarding. No one has said that they want to go out of the city. A large number of goods of Zhenla in the treasury have all been sold out. Most of the merchants even borrowed money at the entrance of the government office and then turned around to buy goods. But there are also a large number of Huzi, Tubo, and Turkic merchants who have come to buy goods. I sent someone to talk to General Yuchi. He didn't find any clues, but the people on the trade route are indeed much less than before. I am investigating this matter, and I believe that there will be definite news tomorrow." Li Shimin heard this. He nodded. As long as the money in the treasury didn't decrease, it meant that everything was normal. As for why these merchants didn't transport goods out and why they hoarded in Chang'an, Li Shimin didn't worry about it. There was no problem with the trade route. That meant that these merchants were deliberately hoarding goods. It was not up to him to care about it. After thinking about it, Li Shimin didn't think about it anymore. There was no problem with the money, and no bad things had happened to the merchants, which meant that this matter hadn't developed to a bad point for the time being. After all, there were merchants who had the habit of hoarding goods before. Now, it was just that there were more goods. After Li Shimin understood this, he didn't think about it anymore. He waved his hand and said, "Okay, let's not think too much. Maybe Brother Zhang Feng is drunk, or he wants us to be on guard against the Guanlong group. As long as we pay attention now, once this matter starts, even if the Guanlong group wants to cause trouble, it's over. Now, let's eat and finalize the matter of them worshipping Zhang Feng as their teacher." Okay, and at this moment, when the gong sounded, it was the time of the hour. In a dark room in Chang'an City, an oil lamp was slowly lit by someone. The next moment, a group of luxuriously dressed figures appeared in this room. One of them, a white-haired old man with a veil, glanced at the crowd and asked, "How is it?" Chapter 254. In the dyeing house of Xinghua Lane. Usually, this place was just an inconspicuous cloth dyeing shop. However, tonight, it was already midnight, but in the backyard of this cloth dyeing shop, a candle flame was so conspicuous in the night. And in this small house, it was actually crowded with people. Some of them were dressed in servant clothes, some were dressed in servant clothes, and some were even dressed in gorgeous clothes. There was an old man who was sitting at the highest point of the house, and a few people who were about 20 years old standing at the door. At this time, they were looking at the old man in the lead respectfully. The old man didn't seem to want to talk. He sat steadily at the head of the table, sipping tea from time to time. "Have you all found out about this matter? What do you think about this matter?" Everyone heard this. He hurriedly replied, "Your Excellency, we've already dealt with it cleanly. We've already greeted all the merchants who are related to us, and we've settled everything on the trade route. As long as we give the order, all the materials piled up in Chang'an and will cause the entire city to fall into chaos. And these businessmen have promised that they will create public opinion at the critical moment." Okay. The old man waved his hand impatiently. "I just want to know if you've dealt with it. I only want the result." "Yes. I've also dealt with it here. We're just waiting for the Sir's order." After everyone gave their assurances, the old man put down the teacup and said with a smile, "Good. In that case, let's get started." This time, Li Shimin was still kept in the dark. This is worthy of praise. When I go back, I'll definitely report this to the higher-ups. I will also truthfully report your contributions to the higher-ups. Thank you very much, sir. After saying this, the old man turned an emerald ring in his hand and said coldly, "You want to go against my Guanlong group? Li Shimin, I'm afraid you've forgotten how the Sui dynasty fell. You've probably forgotten how your Li family climbed up, haven't you? Everyone, get ready tonight. Tomorrow, I only want to hear the news of chaos in Chang'an city." Yes. Night fell. It was a restless night. But the night would eventually pass. The night would eventually pass. When the sun shone on Chang'an city again, a strange atmosphere suddenly spread in Chang'an city. A rumor suddenly appeared on the streets of Xinghua Square in Chang. Have you heard? These merchants were going to suffer a huge loss this time. I heard that the big countries in the western regions have forbidden our merchants from entering. What? Then what about my goods? I've already put in all my savings. Who isn't? The batch of goods I'm importing from Zhenla is finished. Those are saltwater fish. If we don't deal with this quickly, then what should we do? What else can we do? Isn't this the real thing that the government wants us to buy? Now that they don't want it anymore, we have to go to the authorities. If they can lend us the money, it means that they can definitely handle this matter. Someone in the crowd roared. In an instant, all the merchants flocked to the temporary government office of the Ministry of Works, as if they had found their backbone. And this matter was still fermenting, as if there was a hand stirring the muddy water. Everyone rushed to the direction of the Chang'an city treasury like crazy. There were even some people who were pulling their goods and shouting in the city. They were howling about how the officials were not giving them a good life, and whatnot. And at this time, urgent reports were also placed on Li Shimin's desk. Urgent document from Longyu Circuit. All the Guanlong Trading Company in Longyu Circuit issued a notice at the same time. From today onwards, all the trading routes will be suspended, and the 5 families and 7 major clans will jointly impose economic sanctions on Chang. Urgent report from Shannon Circuit. Li family of Longxi, one of the 5 families and 7 major clans, today suspends the sale of food to Chang. All the branches are banned from trading with Chang. Jiannan Circuit, Hebei Circuit, Hunan Circuit, Jiangnan Circuit. The urgent reports made Li Shimin's face completely gloomy. Guanlong Trading Company, are you in such a hurry to suppress me? Do you really think I'm not prepared for your suppression? Li Shimin was angry. If it weren't for Zhang Feng's guidance, he might not have realized the seriousness of this matter until now. But now, he was prepared, so he was not in such a hurry to deal with it. With a wave of his hand, Li Shimin shouted, "What's the situation in Chang'an today?" Hearing this, a small yellow door outside the imperial study hurried in, knelt down and said, "Your Majesty, there are a lot of rumors in the room. The officials are dealing with the angry people. Now, all the people are at the gate of the Chang'an city treasury. Lord Fong and Lord Zhangsun have sent people to deal with this matter in person. Good, good, good." A strong killing intent burst out of Li Shimin's eyes. He waved his hand and shouted, "Send my order." Wei Zheng, Qing Yaojin, and the others immediately enter the palace and send a message to the Chang'an city garrison. Immediately gather 50,000 soldiers and wait for orders. Chapter 255. The Chaos in Chang'an City. Zhang Feng faintly felt that something was wrong. The Guanlong group had finally made a move. But why had the emperor not made a move? Moreover, who knew what that bastard old Li was doing these days? There was no movement at all. Was he waiting for death? Zhang Feng looked at the people scurrying around on the street. He turned over and lay down on the recliner under the crooked tree. He did not want to take a nap like this. He had also heard about this. It was very clever. This opponent had some intelligence. First, he used the Guanlong group to put pressure on the merchants to stock up crazily. Then, at the right time, he cut off the trade routes. This was really a good move. Even in the modern world a few hundred years later, he would be considered a talent. This was awesome. Zhang Feng admired the person who came up with this plan. But was there a solution now? Zhang Feng was silent. This time, the Guanlong group had held back for so long. When they made a move, they would definitely make a big move. And it would be a big move that could strangle the emperor. Did that mean that the 7 major clans had made a move at this time? Zhang Feng smiled. In his previous life, he had developed a strong interest in this mysterious Wuxia aristocrat. He did not expect to meet this mysterious force at this time. The 7 major clans could control the rise and fall of a dynasty. This force, could the emperor really win against them? Zhang Feng smiled. But he also fell asleep. Just as Zhang Feng fell asleep, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. In the imperial study. Zhang Sun Wuji and the others appeared in the imperial study, sweating profusely. Last night, they were still assuring him that there was absolutely nothing wrong, but they didn't expect to hear such a lousy thing when they woke up early in the morning. And from the report from the little yellow door, the emperor seemed to be very angry this time. At this time, the 5 of them lowered their heads and did not dare to say a word. Li Shimin was also anxious. He paced back and forth in the imperial study. I don't want to ask anymore. I don't want to ask anymore. The whole thing was my negligence. If I had asked Brother Zhang Feng earlier, things wouldn't have turned out this way. But now that things have happened, we have to think of a solution. We can't ask Brother Zhang Feng for help now that something has gone wrong. Even if you feel embarrassed, I feel embarrassed. Let's all talk. What should we do about this? Your Majesty, I, Old Qing, feel that we should let the Imperial City Guards search from house to house. They will definitely. All right, shut up. Shut up. Li Shimin impatiently waved his hand and pointed at Zhang Sun Wuji. You're the Minister of Justice. How do you think we should solve this problem? This, your humble servant is slow-witted. Right now, all the trade routes outside of Chang'an have been cut off. Even if we could reopen the trade routes, who would the merchants sell their goods to? The 5 clans and 7 watchful families control all the entrances to trade. At this time, no one would have thought that they would attack at the same time. I am stupid, I don't know what to do. Wei Zheng. Li Shimin's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. He shouted angrily, Du Ruhui Fang Xianling, the 2 of you carefully think of a solution for me. At this time, Wei Zheng said, Your Majesty, your humble servant thinks that the best way to solve this problem is to negotiate with the people of the Guanlong group. There's nothing that can't be discussed. Moreover, this matter is obviously aimed at this cooperative. If your Majesty is willing to compromise, this humble servant thinks that there will be room for negotiation. Will there be? Li Shimin laughed at himself. He knew how overbearing the Guanlong group was. He wanted to suppress the Guanlong group behind their back. No one was a fool. Everyone knew very well in their hearts. Moreover, it was obvious that he wanted to take control of the economy. This obviously affected their development. Unless he gave away the rights to this cooperative and she immediately abdicated, he really couldn't think of any other way to solve this problem perfectly. This matter was just an excuse for Guanlong to beat him at this time. Li Shimin knew very well in his heart. Alas. Li Shimin sighed deeply. This matter, you and the others go and comfort me first. As for the solution, Li Shimin fell silent again. Up until now, this matter had happened. Except for these people standing in front of him, who else came to report about this matter? A burst of sad anger leisurely burned in Li Shimin's chest. This is one of my subjects. This is the courtier of the Tang dynasty. Was this what those fellows who kept on talking about were doing now? I'm afraid that everyone is busy counting the family property now. Who can spare a thought for me at this time? Li Shimin couldn't help but tremble. He tried hard to make himself not think about this matter. Then he waved his hand and said, Forget it, forget it. Now put down everything for me. Send all the people to solve the chaos in Chang'an. As for the solution, I'll personally ask Brother Zhang Feng. Li Shimin looked up to the sky and sighed. He pointed to the window. No one could see clearly his anger. Li Shimin seemed to be talking to himself. This is the imperial court of the Tang dynasty. although it is said that there are hundreds of courtiers. But at this time, how many people are really thinking for me? It's time to clean up. Chapter 256. As all the merchants in Chang'an city began to panic. Everyone in Chang'an city gradually felt a trace of pressure. At this time, in Chang'an city, even the glass products that were usually worth more than 10 taels of silver had their prices plummeted to the freezing point today. 5 taels of silver. Such a shocking thing not only did not make the people feel excited, but they also felt a trace of fear. In the Daxing market of Ndingfang, at this time, in the market full of goods, all the merchants personally went to the market. They shouted with red faces and thick necks, "Come, come, come, don't miss this. Top-grade silks are being sold at half price. Quality guarantee, a benefit that can wait 1,000 years for a moment. Dear villagers, I am a merchant from Daoist country. Because of some matters, all the silk products, all the silks, all the furs, all the tea leaves, and all the other goods are being sold at half price. Don't miss this opportunity." All the goods were originally priced at 1 tael of silver, but now they are sold for 100 copper coins. 100 copper coins. Dear villagers, come and have a look. And in this regard, all the people were stunned. What the F***CK, what's going on? Mother F***Ker? Are these merchants in cahoots? Damn it. Are we buying or not? No. Wait a minute, I keep feeling that something is wrong. There were many onlookers, but there were only a few people who were willing to buy it. It could even be said that everyone clutched their money bags tightly, afraid that the money bags they had just bulged would be directly taken away by these unscrupulous businessmen for some reason. Somewhere, an old man who heard the news from a village outside Chang'an city drove a carriage, frowning as if he was patrolling. With his hands behind his back, he slowly selected the silk products that he once did not dare to look at. Early in the morning, he heard that Chang'an city was in chaos. All the merchants were selling their goods at half price, and there were even some who directly came to sell and give away at half price. How could he let go of such a good thing? Looking at the people in the village, those unmarried girls or young men who were half-grown, every day, they did not have the money to buy clothes to cover their bodies. She couldn't even bear to buy linen clothes. Normally, only the rich could afford to wear these clothes, but now they were cheaper than linen clothes. The old patriarch brought the smart young men of the clan to Chang'an to try their luck. If that was the case, then what harm was there in buying some? The old patriarch paced back and forth in front of every silk stall and compared them with the linen clothing store. Then, he picked up a piece of silk cloth and asked in front of a dejected fat man, "Shopkeeper, how much is this cloth?" The fatty was already in despair. The trade route outside was blocked. Moreover, it was someone that even the imperial family could not afford to offend. How could he not be worried? Half a day had passed, but he hadn't sold a single foot of cloth. It seemed as if he would lose everything he had invested in these materials. However, at this very moment, someone actually came to ask about it. All of a sudden, the fatty was energized. Looking at all the pairs of shrewd eyes staring at him, he rolled his eyes, patted his chest and roared, "Sir, you really have a good eye. You've seen this cloth too. It's top-grade silk. You're my first customer today. How about this? If you like it, you can give me a price. On top of the price you gave, I'll give you another piece of cloth. How about that?" This who merchant had a good eye. Zhang Feng stood in the crowd and couldn't help but nod. This kind of business was quite similar to the promotion model of the modern era. Although it seemed like he was making a loss, once this news spread, it would be strange if he lost money. As long as he could suppress the situation later, he wouldn't lose much from the 5 carts of silk cloth today. Just as Zhang Feng was pondering what the fatty was going to do, the old patriarch narrowed his eyes. The old man narrowed his eyes and tightly gripped the brown silk cloth in his hand. He asked, "Really?" The fatty patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, sir. I'm a proper merchant, and a who at that. I'm in a hurry to return to Daoist, so I'll keep my word on these materials." "Really? Little brother, is what you said true? We only need to name a price for these pieces of cloth?" "Little brother, don't you think you're right?" All the onlookers were aghast. They hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed a piece of cloth, shouting with red eyes. The fatty wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "Everyone, I'm sure you all know the price of these materials. However, because that unscrupulous Guan Long Corporation is wantonly suppressing us, we can't do anything about it. So, in order to not lose too much, we've lowered the price to the lowest. But don't worry. I've said before that these materials were originally worth more than 100 taels. But now they only cost 10 taels." Hearing this, everyone was disappointed. Even the old patriarch had a look of deep disappointment in his eyes at this moment. The fat man's eyes swept across everyone's faces before he said, "Old man, this is my first time meeting you. You're my first customer. I'm a man of my word. Just name a price. We'll definitely give you these 2 bolts of cloth." "Really? I'll keep my word." Then, the old man stretched out 3 trembling fingers and said, 50 taels? Chapter 257. 50 copper coins. At this time, a bolt of silk cloth was worth 200 copper coins. This was the normal price. But at this moment, this rotten old man actually offered 50 copper coins? He could sell it? And it was a buy one get one free situation. Was he an idiot? All the onlookers, the peddlers, the merchants, and even the patrolling soldiers all stopped to watch the show. Even the patrolling soldiers unsheathed their swords at this moment. As long as this fellow dared to deny his previous words, they dared to swarm up and take this troublemaker to jail, letting him have a taste of what it was like to lie. Moreover, their families were lacking in food and clothing. If they could really buy a bolt of cloth at this price, then they would go and snatch one. Zhang Feng glanced at him with interest before leaving. The situation here was basically settled. The merchant was bound to make a killing. At this moment, in the crowd, the officials from the Bureau of Works and Bureau of Punishments were anxiously waiting for the merchant to give a reasonable answer. But at this moment, that fatty unexpectedly agreed. "Old sir, you are my first customer today." Then as the first customer, the rules of my Abbasid Caliphate are that we will pay whatever you say. Then 50 copper coins. You hand over the money and I hand over the goods, and these 2 bolts of cloth are yours. Really? The old tribal chief was also rather surprised. And it was a shock. He had never intended to buy the cloth with this amount of money, but now? He had actually agreed. "I'm sure." The fatty stood on the carriage once more, raising a bolt of cloth and roaring, "We merchants value our reputation the most. Every mouthful of saliva is a nail in the nail. Since I've agreed, I'll do as I say." Everyone's eyes turned red. When they saw the old sir hand over 50 copper coins to the fatty, choose 2 bolts of cloth from the fatty's carriage, and happily leave, everyone exploded and swarmed forward. "Boss, I want 10 bolts of cloth. I want 3 bolts. Me too." Everyone began to scramble for the cloth, and the fatty heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the frenzied crowd, he revealed his yellow teeth. "Everyone, don't be anxious, don't be anxious. Listen to me." He didn't take the money. Instead, he slowly said, "This time, it's all because of those damned Guan Long nobles. I don't know what's gotten into them, but they sealed off all the trade routes. Our goods can't be shipped out. And you also know that we came all the way to the Tang dynasty just to make a living. But unfortunately, we encountered such a situation, so we had no choice but to do this." "Fatty, what do you mean?" The people in the crowd were furious. No one was a fool. When they heard this, everyone instantly came to a realization. Could it be that this bastard wanted to revert to the original price? "Fatty, this is the Tang dynasty. If you dare to cheat, I'll let you have a taste of my Chang'an and local government." The patrolling soldiers in the crowd were angry. The fatty's face was pale as he waved his hands. "Sir, please calm down and listen to me carefully. Businessmen, especially foreign businessmen, were subject to strict laws in the Tang dynasty. If they encountered those who cheated or wanted to steal, they would be thrown into prison and expelled from the Tang dynasty. They would never be allowed to step into the Tang dynasty again. This was the attitude of the Tang dynasty towards foreigners. How could the fatty not be anxious at this time? He hurriedly explained, "This time, it's our fault. I didn't make it clear before. I just said that this old man is our first customer. Everyone heard that, right? So for this matter, for the first customer, we will usually satisfy his request. But for the later ones, it's not so bad. Under the angry eyes of the crowd, the fatty hurriedly said, but the price is still 200 coins per bolt. On this basis, we'll give you a bolt of cloth. It's 100 coins per bolt. Of course, if you want to buy a bolt of cloth, we'll charge 90 coins. That's fine. Hearing this, the crowd could not help but frown and slowly calculate. Most of the people left angrily, but there were still some people who were counting on their fingers, calculating something. In the end, someone made a move. 90 coins, and he really bought a bolt of cloth. This time, the people who were still hesitating finally could not help but make a move. They all made a move. On the other side, all the onlooking businessmen frowned thoughtfully and calculated. Some people even followed the fatty's method. Sure enough, in this way, the things that no one was interested in were instantly sold out. Even the patrolling soldiers could not help but rush forward to buy. The figures of the Ministry of Works were hidden in the crowd. From time to time, they would record something in the small notebook in their arms. On the other side, there was no such good thing. This kind of thing only happened among the barbarian businessmen and foreign businessmen who were anxious not to get involved in the internal strife of the Tang dynasty. But the local businessmen of Chang'an were miserable. They did not have any rare goods in their hands. For the foreign businessmen, this was at most a small profit, but not a big loss. But for the businessmen of the Tang dynasty, this was a disaster. At this time, in the Chang'an local government, the high pile of complaints made the county magistrate's head ache. When had he ever seen such a thing? At this time, in the back hall of the county government, the county magistrate, Zhu Dashan, was sweating and pacing back and forth in the room. Beside him, the advisor with a goatee, who was as thin as a monkey, was half squinting and sitting motionless on the chair. If it were not for his beard that moved from time to time, everyone would think that he was asleep. At this time, a yamen runner rushed into the back hall and reported, "Sir, something happened to Sir." Hearing this, Zhu Dashan and the advisor's eyes twitched. They asked in unison, "What happened?" "The Ministry of Works is here." Chapter 258. Zhu Dashan heaved a deep sigh of relief. He hurriedly shouted, "Then why are you still standing there? Hurry up and invite them in." He did not dare to go to the front hall. In the front hall, there was already a sea of people, crying and wailing. He was worried. Whenever he heard the merchants' cries, he would have a headache. However, he had no choice but to listen. The people from the Ministry of Works were here. What could he do? However, it would be easier to handle if someone in charge came. This was the Ministry of Works matter. If the Ministry of Works had not set up a cooperative, would things have turned out this way? Zhu Dashan knew very well that this was a matter between the emperor and the Guanlong group. As a lowly county magistrate, it was not easy for him to judge. How could he judge? Could he say it was the Ministry of Works? He did not dare. Could he say it was Guanlong's fault? Did he still want to live? Did he still want to eat rice? Therefore, he did not dare to offend anyone. One was his immediate superior. If he was careless, his head would roll. The other was the biggest business team in the Tang dynasty. If he dared to offend them, he could guarantee that he would not be able to buy a single grain of rice tomorrow. That was the terrifying thing about the Guanlong group. Just as Zhu Dashan was letting his imagination run wild, the people from the Ministry of Works came in. Zhu Dashan and his private advisor forced an ugly smile when they saw the person. They bowed and said, "Lord's son, you're finally here." The person who came was a minor supervisor from the Ministry of Works. However, even a minor supervisor like him could not compare to his position as a county magistrate. That was because the supervisor worked in the palace, while he was just a minor county magistrate. Zhu Dashan, let me ask you, how many cases have the Chang'an local government received this time about the road closures caused by Guanlong? The person who came was concise and comprehensive. Obviously, he did not care about his complaints. Zhu Dashan hurriedly replied, "Lord's son, the Chang'an local government received a total of 90 complaints today. I dare not judge the cases so easily, so I've already submitted them to the higher-ups. Lord Sun frowned and nodded. That's all for now. As for the future, we'll talk about it later. Delay all cases as long as you can. The Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Justice have already intervened in this matter. As for the complaints in the future, submit them to the Ministry of Justice immediately. At that time, the Ministry of Justice will give you a unified answer. I understand. Zhu Dashan heaved a sigh of relief. It would be great if he didn't have to make a move. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but it was obvious that this matter had exceeded the scope of what he could handle. He did not dare to move. Obviously, this was the best way. The people from the Ministry of Works hurriedly left. An hour after the people from the Ministry of Works left, notices were posted everywhere in Chang'an City. From today onwards, all merchants who are involved in hoarding goods can report to the Ministry of Justice. As for the punishment, the Ministry of Justice will give you an explanation within 3 days. All the merchants and commoners panicked when they saw the announcement from the Ministry of Justice. Although he said that he would give an explanation 3 days later. However, this was only an explanation. He didn't say anything about solving it. Everyone panicked. Looking at the notices, all the merchants blocked all the people from the Ministry of Justice who came to put up the notices and asked, "Sir, the notice says that there will be an explanation in 3 days. However, what we are hoarding are smuggled goods that we bought from the treasury. How can we still use them after 3 days?" "That's right. My lord, the goods in our hands were all obtained from the treasury. Can we return the goods first? We can't wait for a day. How many aquatic products will die? Sir, please take pity on us and let us feel at ease." Everyone who put up the notices panicked. Actually, I can understand everyone's concerns. However, this matter has alarmed the emperor. Therefore, I ask everyone to be patient and wait for a while. Right now, His Majesty is dealing with this matter, so at the latest tomorrow, His Majesty will make a decision. At the same time, in Taiji Palace, Li Shimin's hair, which had returned to its original black color after eating the powder of the locust eggs, had turned white again. After a night, his black hair had already turned gray. He was worried. He did not expect Guanlong's suppression to start when hoarding began in Chang'an City. Every time Li Shimin thought of this matter, he wished he could slap himself a few times. How good would it be if he had listened to Zhang Feng at that time? He would not be trapped in a hopeless situation now. However, what could he do now? Everything was trapped in Chang'an. If he did not come up with a solution today, Chang'an would be in chaos. What should he do? What should he do? Li Shimin was even more worried. Looking at the emperor, little Gizi wanted to say something again, but he held himself back in the end. However, after seeing the emperor in so much pain, he could not help but say, "Your Majesty, why don't we ask Zhang Feng for help?" Since he was able to predict this matter, then he must have a way to solve this matter. Brother Zhang Feng. Li Shimin heard this and a strange look flashed across his eyes. I am ashamed to face Brother Zhang Feng. Chapter 259. On the streets of Chang'an, Li Shimin sat in an ordinary sedan chair. Through the curtains, he looked at the goods piled up like mountains outside. His head hurt again. This time, he did not ask anyone to accompany him. It was just him, a carriage, and a group of guards. It was that simple. This way, he could see the real Chang'an City. When he had time, he wanted to walk around Chang'an City alone and talk about it with Zhang Feng. But he could not do it. He was the emperor of the Tang dynasty. If he did not do something right, he would be impeached by all the civil and military officials in the imperial court. It was the same this time. Li Shimin waited for a day and a night. Not a single official came up with a good idea because of this matter. Instead, during the morning court session, he met many who came to complain. They came to impeach the Ministry of Works and himself. These were his officials. Li Shimin felt a wave of sadness. A wave of deep sadness. This was his imperial court. When there was nothing going on, everyone was a good official. But once something happened to the Tang dynasty, a large group of people would come to impeach someone. Sometimes, Li Shimin wanted to directly confront Zhang Feng and ask him to reorganize the imperial college. He wanted to find someone who could really think for the Tang dynasty. But he did not dare. He did not want to. His relationship with Zhang Feng was so bluntly announced. More importantly, he cared too much about Zhang Feng. So, he did not want Zhang Feng to be trapped in the filthy place of the imperial court so early. At this time, his mind was full of that mysterious scripture. That was the thing that was rumored to be passed down by Shun. It was the thing that helped the king of Qin to unify the world. It was the thing that made everyone crazily fight for it. Was it true or not? At this time, Li Shimin was very conflicted. He didn't know what he had done wrong to cause the entire country to fall into a situation where it was controlled by others. Whether it was Guan Long, the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs, or even the Tujue who was waiting for an opportunity by his bed, all of them were blocking his path. Master Li, we're here. Just as Li Shimin was letting his imagination run wild, little Gizi quietly reminded Li Shimin from outside the sedan. Li Shimin took a deep breath and looked at the familiar yet strange Tonghui Square, which was also the market where Zhang Feng lived. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of the palanquin. With a wave of his hand, he ordered the Jinwu guards, who were disguised as attendants, to hide in the shadows and guard the area. He even ordered Xiao Gizi to wait at the entrance of the square. Only then did he sort out his emotions and slowly walk towards Zhang Feng's tavern. Just as he turned 3 alleys, he saw Zhang Feng with his hands clasped behind his back, kicking a broken tile as he walked back. Brother Zhang Feng, you're going out? Li Shimin was surprised. He could clearly see that Zhang Feng was thinking about something. When Zhang Feng saw Li Shimin, he was also stunned. The foot that he kicked out slipped, and he instantly stumbled and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Li Shimin hurried forward to help him up. Lao Li? Why are you here? Shouldn't you be helping Lord Zhang's son deal with this mess right now? Right, what I asked Li Gan to tell you last time, did you tell Zhang's son Wuji? Li Shimin sighed and silently helped Zhang Feng up. Seeing this, Zhang Feng's face darkened. This Lao Li, how could he be so careless about such an important matter? Zhang Feng's face also changed slightly. Follow me into the house. Zhang Feng did not waste any more words. The current situation did not allow him to waste any more words. After entering the tavern, Zhang Feng did not take any wine, nor did he go to the kitchen as usual. Instead, he took a bag of tiger jerky wrapped in oil paper from the counter and poured a cup of tea for Li Shimin. Then he asked, Lao Li, tell me the truth. How much of this matter did you participate in? If it's not much, then just treat it as spending money to avoid disaster. Don't get too used to it. Brother Zhang Feng. Li Shimin sighed and said, last time, you asked Xianhe, that bastard, to pass the message to me. I also heard him tell me the truth. However, I may have been blinded by lard. I didn't take Guan Long's matter to heart. After all, it was the emperor's matter. How could we, the common people, get involved? However, I did not expect Guan Long's grandson to be so vicious. He directly cut off all the trade routes. Now, even if I wanted to ignore it, I have no choice. I directly bet all my wealth from the treasury on Jinla's seafood. Originally, I wanted to get you some of that arm-length prawn thing you mentioned. But now, it's a little inauspicious, so today, I did not bring. Zhang Feng pulled a handful of hair, his face full of worry. Tell me the truth, how much seafood did you get from Jinla? Almost all my wealth. Zhang Feng was a little dizzy. This fool. Don't you know that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows? Are you still king businessman? Don't you know this kind of thing? I've tried so hard to persuade you so much, but you've turned a deaf ear to my advice. Zhang Feng was speechless. He rubbed his temples, feeling a headache. Lao Li, I can't help you this time. I already told you to send your precious son to the military camp to seek refuge. I asked Lord Zhang's son to pass a message to divert everyone's attention to the war at the border, but you didn't listen. Now, you didn't prepare anything and they blocked the door for you. Now, I can't do anything. Chapter 260. Li Shimin heard this. He felt a little dizzy. Brother Zhang Feng, you can't do this. If you do this, I Lao Li can't live anymore. You also know our current situation. If we want to escape now, it's too late. When the time comes, if the emperor comes to settle accounts, then won't my family be confiscated and my ancestors exterminated? Zhang Feng glared at him. Now you remember what I said? I told you not to invest all your money, but you didn't listen. Now what are you going to do? You're blocking my way. What can I do? Zhang Feng was speechless. Logically speaking, the emperor was not a fool. How could he not know that Guanlong was such a big threat? If this were to happen, the Great Tang would be doomed. They would be blocked at any time. Zhang Feng couldn't help but comfort him. However, Laoli, don't worry. It's not all bad. At least, the cooperative and marketing model have been quietly implemented under such high pressure. You didn't see that fatty from Daoist country today. I almost thought that it was you who set up the trap. Li Yundong said with a smile. That fatty from Daoist country? That fat man was indeed arranged by me. He came to me before, so I used this trick on him. Brother Zhangfeng, what do you think? Li Shimin finally regained some of his pride. Not bad. Zhang Feng curled his lips. I've told you this many times, and I used it last time in Longyu Road. If you don't know how to use it now, then you're really hopeless. However, this is just a drop in the bucket. Even if all the people in Chang'an city participate in the purchase, they still can't stop the blockade of Chang'an by the Guanlong group this time. So, the key is to solve the problem from the root. Have you thought about it? Li Shimin couldn't help but slowly frown. Alas, Brother Zhang Feng, how can I not think about it? I've been thinking too much. Do you know how I spent the night last night? In the Imperial Palace. Do you know about the Imperial Palace? All those big shots were pressuring me so much that I didn't even dare to breathe loudly. But even so, I still haven't come up with a solution. When Zhang Feng heard this, he rubbed his chin and asked, What did the emperor say? Have you seen His Majesty? Li Shimin shook his head like a rattledrum. Although I didn't see His Majesty, I heard that His Majesty hasn't slept for 2 nights. I'm guessing he's worried about this matter. What the F***ck were you doing earlier? Zhang Feng was speechless. If he had thought of these things earlier, he wouldn't be in such a passive position now. Mother ***ker, to think that I thought he had a plan beforehand. That's why I mentioned it the last time your precious son came. I didn't expect it to be nothing at all. What does he do? How long has it been since the founding of the Tang dynasty? Has he forgotten the pain so quickly? Zhang Feng was speechless. Li Shimin's face turned red. But what could he do? He had indeed forgotten about the Guanlong group before, but he thought that Guanlong wouldn't do anything since it was a mutually beneficial thing. But he didn't expect Guanlong to be so ruthless this time. Mother ***ker, you've monopolized the economy of the Tang dynasty. I just want to make some money, but you still want to suppress me. What the hell is this? At this time, Li Shimin had an impulse. If it really doesn't work, I'll just eradicate them all. The Tang dynasty's economic development will only be weakened for a few years. Li Shimin can still bear it. Thinking of this, Li Shimin interrupted Zhang Feng's chatter and asked, Brother Zhang Feng, do you think His Majesty wants to uproot these guys? In other words, send the army to eradicate them? Zhang Feng waved his hand. As long as His Majesty isn't a fool, he won't do such a stupid thing. Think about it. Once His Majesty sends the army, the internal strife against the Tang dynasty won't be limited to Guanlong, but the entire western regions will be in chaos. Just think about how the previous dynasty fell and you'll understand. Guanlong has a long history, and he has a large number of supporters and beneficiaries in various countries. This ensures that he won't hang himself in one place. Once there's a problem in one place, other places will react in an instant. Think about the consequences. Hearing this, Li Shimin couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. A touch of sadness flashed in his eyes. Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin, shook his head, and patted him on the shoulder. Laoli, don't worry too much about this matter. His Majesty knows what he's doing. Otherwise, why would I call him the Emperor of all ages? Then, Brother Zhang Feng, if it were you, what would you do? How would you solve this dilemma? Basically, Chang'an and city and all the important economic areas of the Tang dynasty are basically paralyzed at the same time. If the problem isn't solved in a short time, what awaits the Tang dynasty won't just be my business, but the entire Tang dynasty's economic decline. I really don't want to see this. Zhang Feng nodded. He walked to the door of the tavern, opened it, and looked around. He asked Guzi and the others, who were squatting on the ground and playing with mud, to help him look around. Then he returned to Li Shimin's side and whispered, "Actually, I do have a way. It's the only way." Chapter 261. What is it? Li Shimin grabbed Zhang Feng's hand excitedly. His burning gaze made Zhang Feng's hair stand on end. He shook off Zhang Feng's hand with a look of disgust and said, "Let's talk about it. Don't drag me around. I haven't even talked about my wife yet. If someone else saw this, it would be terrible." Tell me quickly. You're making me anxious. How could Li Shimin not be anxious? At this time, it would be strange if he wasn't anxious. Seeing Zhang Feng dragging his feet, Li Shimin was so anxious that he wanted to strangle him. Zhang Feng couldn't stand Li Shimin's burning gaze and said, "In fact, anyone who hangs around Chang'an city knows about this." What? Zhang Feng wasn't anxious. He asked, "Lao Li, let me ask you, are all the trade routes in Chang'an city and in Luozhou blocked?" "That's true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so anxious. As long as the siege of Chang'an and Luozhou is lifted, Guanlong's suppression will collapse. But the problem is how to get rid of this thing. You said that the emperor can't go to war with Guanlong. He can't surrender to Guanlong either. What else can we do? Don't tell him to surrender and lose half of it. Otherwise, Lao Li will despise you." Li Shimin's words were quite good at the beginning, but the meaning of his words changed as he spoke. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel anxious. He pointed at himself and asked with a puzzled look, "Me? Zhang Feng? Am I that kind of person? Which eye of yours saw or which ear of yours heard Lao Tzu telling him to surrender? This is obviously not our Zhang Feng style, okay? You've been with me for so long, don't you understand my style? Lao Tzu would rather twist the enemy's head off than lower his head. This is the pride of a man. In other words, he was proud and unyielding. Let me ask you, do you have any pride?" Li Shimin also hurriedly patted his chest and promised. In the entire world, who could make him lower his head? Other than heaven and earth and their parents, who else would dare? He, Li Shimin, still had this bit of pride. Zhang Feng shrugged. "Isn't that enough? Then why are you asking such an idiotic question?" Li Shimin rubbed his hands and said, "Isn't that because I'm scared?" "What are you afraid of? His Majesty isn't in a hurry, so what are you in a hurry for? With your family background, if you throw it at the gate of the Guanlong group, they might not even look at it." Zhang Feng despised Li Shimin. "Okay, my family business is small, but you don't have to hurt me like this, do you? Now that everything is in front of your eyes, do you have the heart to see me suffer here?" Li Shimin shrugged with a wry smile. Zhang Feng shrugged. "Okay, in that case, I won't tease you anymore. Let me ask you, what did you hear from His Majesty last night? And did His Majesty not prepare for it at all?" "No." Li Shimin shook his head. If he had prepared for this matter, how could the current situation have happened? Perhaps this was what they meant by extreme joy begets sorrow. Hearing this, Zhang Feng paced back and forth in the room with his hands behind his back. The current situation was a dilemma for the Tang dynasty. Zhang Feng's expression suddenly changed. Could it be that because of his appearance, everything in the Tang dynasty had developed steadily in a short period of time, and then the normal trajectory of history had deviated from the original? And then there was a chain reaction? But that couldn't be right. Even if he appeared, he just sped up the world by a small step, and everything he did was just a small step. Only this cooperative was a big move. Was it because of this that everything in the world was in chaos? The Guanlong group took action, and the hidden behemoths behind me would also show their ferocious fangs at this moment. At that time, with the cooperation of these two behemoths, what would happen to the Tang dynasty? Zhang Feng didn't dare to think about it. Part of all this must be because of the cooperative, and the bigger reason might be that in this world, the traditional model could make the world change? Since it was going to change, Zhang Feng clenched his fists. Looking at the sunlight outside the window, he roared in his heart. Since it's going to change, then the rule of Zhenguan will start from this time to fight against Guanlong. Turning around, Zhang Feng said to Li Shimin with a serious look, "This time, we're going to open up a new trade route and take away the prestige and industries of Guanlong and the 5 families. Do you dare to do it? If you do, I think the current emperor will like it very much. At that time, you'll either fail on the verge of success and become a scapegoat, or you'll become a supreme scholar in one fell swoop. Do you dare to do it? Open up a new trade route?" This, over the past thousands of years, all the businesses had been built slowly over time. If this was really a new business, then Li Shimin didn't dare to think about it. However, when he thought about everything controlled by the Guanlong group and the 5 families, he couldn't help but ask, "What is the new trade route you mentioned?" Zhang Feng didn't answer him, but said, "I remember that outside Chang'an city, there are 8 rivers, right?" Chapter 262. 8 Rivers Circle? How could Li Shimin not know about these 8 rivers? These 8 rivers were Wei, Jing, Feng, Watershed, Bai, and Ba. However, these 8 rivers were basically blocked by silt. In addition, in recent years, the imperial court did not pay attention to these 8 rivers for the Tang dynasty. Therefore, these rivers were basically stranded. However, why would Zhang Feng suddenly say this at this time? Could it be that he wants to use these 8 rivers to change the siege? This doesn't seem to be possible. Li Shimin could not help but ask tentatively, "Brother Zhang Feng, do you mean to use these 8 rivers as a breakthrough point? And then bypass the Guanlong group's blockade?" This plan is good, but have you thought about these years, these rivers? Before Li Shimin could finish, Zhang Feng interrupted him, "I know all these things. But have you thought about it? Is there any place in the world that can compare to Chang'an city? Only Chang'an has such a favorable geographical location. But why not take advantage of this convenient route given by the heavens and use the dry road instead? Now that there are dry roads, you can go and take a look. There are people from the Guanlong group everywhere. Everyone underestimated these 8 rivers. Even the Guanlong group did not expect that in their perfect plan, this would be their biggest failure." Li Shimin was finally shocked. 8 rivers? Yes. He had been to countless places. Where else could he encounter the geographical advantage of the 8 waters raising city? This was also the biggest reason why they chose to build the capital here. The timing, location, and people were all right. On the top, there was the Yellow Desert, which could stop the Turks. There was also the Qinling Mountains, which formed a natural barrier. On the left, there was the Endless Plain, which could be rushed. There was even the Yellow River, which made transportation more convenient. However, everyone had forgotten the natural advantage of being at their doorstep during the successive years of war. The 8 waters. 9 was the pinnacle, and the imperial city was located here. This was also the biggest reason why this location was chosen. Everyone only felt that this geographical advantage was blessed by the heavens, but they forgot one point, and that was to make use of it. With Zhang Feng's slight explanation, Li Shimin instantly understood. He hurriedly clasped his fist and said, "Thank you, brother Zhang Feng. I understand now. You mean to let people clear all the silt in the rivers as soon as possible, and then use the 8 rivers to solve the current siege? Right? You finally figured it out." Zhang Feng nodded approvingly. "This time, you finally understand. This is the only way out for Chang. I really don't know why His Majesty won't make use of such an advantage. His Majesty is really—" Li Shimin's eyelids twitched. He hurriedly said again, "Well, I won't disturb you anymore. I'll go back and report this matter to my superiors. Sorry to bother you today, brother Zhang Feng. See you next time." As he spoke, Li Shimin took out a brand new banknote, put it on the table, and then left in a hurry. Zhang Feng curiously took the banknote, which looked like a banknote but was slightly bigger than a banknote, put it under his nose, and took a deep breath. The memory of my previous life is still too little after all. On the other side, Chang'an city was in a mess. Especially those who had bought seafood from the Chang'an city treasury, they were even more anxious now. The weather in Chang'an and city was hotter than anywhere else. In addition, in the past 2 days, the sudden rumor of road closures in Chang'an city made the merchants even more flustered. At this time, hundreds of merchants were either squatting, standing, or lying at the entrance of the treasury, wailing in grief. At the entrance of the treasury, the officials of the treasury were also struggling to deal with the crowd. "I can't live like this anymore. I spent a few thousand taels of silver to buy these things that your treasury guaranteed. Dozens of pounds have died today, and we haven't even left Chang'an city yet. Oh my God! Open your eyes. Your Excellency! You were the one who said that if there was a problem, your treasury would take responsibility. What do you say now? Our things can't even leave Chang'an city. How are we going to get these things?" "Everyone, we are all aware of everyone's difficulties. But we have just informed the higher-ups about this matter. It is said that a special person from Zhenla is on his way here. Before the closure is lifted, he will help you raise these marine fish. Don't worry, all of you." An official's face darkened as he shouted, but the crowd became even angrier. "T. If you are willing to solve it, that's good. We will return the goods. Once the road is lifted, we will come back to buy more, okay? We can't afford to lose this kind of consumption. Your Excellency, please do us a favor. It has only been half a day today, and almost 300 pounds of my fish have died. If they continue to die, my goods will really lose everything." Your Excellency, at this time, all the officials were furious. How could they return these things? One of the officials could not help but roar, "Don't worry, everyone. I'm Zhao Er, the steward of the Chang'an local government treasury. You just have to wait a little longer. After today, everything will be fine. Trust me, I'll use my head as a guarantee. If this matter hasn't been resolved by tomorrow morning, I'll give my head to you." Chapter 263. The Imperial Palace. It was bleak and somewhat miserable. In the huge imperial palace, the sun was like a big stove, crazily heating up the imperial city. The people in the city seemed to have lost their souls, listlessly carrying out the things in their hands. If it weren't for the chamberlains of imperial insignia and the imperial guards marching in unison, the imperial city would have been nothing more than a dead zone. At the moment when the clock struck midnight, teams of Jinwu guards in ordinary clothes hurriedly entered the imperial city from the Vermilion Bird Gate, escorting an ordinary sedan chair. The moment the palanquin appeared, everyone was flabbergasted. But when everyone saw the leader, Xiaogizi, all the people on the road knelt on the ground one after another. They no longer despised the heat of the floor. Li Shimin was in the palanquin. He was issuing orders from the palanquin, and the number of Jinwu guards around the palanquin was rapidly shrinking. When the last order was drafted, Li Shimin was a little hesitant. A moment later, he crushed a document that had just been drafted in his hand and asked, "Xiaogizi, how many people in Chang'an city bought the seafood from the treasury? How many seafood have not been disposed of?" Xiaogizi bowed even lower when he heard this. "Your Majesty, according to the report just now, there are about 30,000 fish in the Sea of Stone in the treasury that have not been disposed of. Due to the temperature, a large number of these fish die every hour." Li Shimin frowned. "Did Zhenla's people not come to help? I remember that King Zhenla had promised me that these fish would be alive and kicking before they left the vault. However, why are there so many requests for returns and a large number of deaths in my hands?" "This, Your Majesty." How could Xiaogizi not know that Li Shimin was angry? Wiping away his sweat, who knew if it was cold or hot, he said, "This is all because of the closure of the trade route. Also, I heard that because of the hot weather, many people, according to the instructions of the wax people, threw the fish into the river to soak, so, send a fax to Lord Zhenla. When I return to Taiji Palace, I want to see Lord Zhenla." Li Shimin was angry. The thing he was most afraid of had happened in the end. The other goods were still fine, but this seafood was alive. If there was even the slightest mistake, it would definitely cause an immeasurable loss. It would even cause all the merchants to avoid this item in the future. In that case, how could they talk about trade? He had eaten this thing before. It was delicious. He never doubted Zhang Feng's words, because if he looked down on Zhang Feng's words, reality would give him a slap. This time was a good example. Therefore, Li Shimin was afraid. What he was afraid of was that this newly established cooperative would cause irreparable losses because of this small matter. This was especially true for the plans of Tubo and the other countries. Xinla's product was the best opportunity. Li Shimin would never allow any problems to occur. A moment later, the sedan chair finally appeared outside Taiji Palace. When the sedan chair appeared, groups of palace maids, who had been waiting there, fell to the ground uniformly. Even Wei Zheng and the others had been waiting for a long time. "Greetings, Your Majesty." When Li Shimin got off the sedan chair, everyone knelt down uniformly. Li Shimin waved his sleeves. "Rise." Then, palace maids helped Li Shimin change into a robe as he hurried into Taiji Palace. When Li Shimin's figure appeared in Taiji Palace, King Xinla also got up slowly. When he saw the solemn expression on Li Shimin's face, King Xinla's eyes flickered rapidly. "Greetings, Your Majesty." "You may dispense with the formalities, King Xinla." Li Shimin stepped forward to help King Xinla up. "Without any formalities," he said directly, "I called you here today because I have something important to discuss with you. I'm sure you already know about what happened in Chang'an. I would like to ask King Xinla if those marine fishes can still be saved." King Xinla's eyes flickered as he thought to himself, as expected. When he saw Li Shimin heave a long sigh of relief, King Xinla said, "The water of these marine fishes is definitely different from the water of the Tang dynasty. I forgot to tell Your Majesty about this. After hearing about this from my subordinates today, I also thought about it carefully. This matter can actually still be resolved. As long as Your Majesty can remove the blockade of the trade route in a short period of time, I can guarantee that the loss of these fishes will be minimized within half a month." "Really?" Upon hearing this, Li Shimin's face was filled with joy. "I don't know how Your Majesty wants to handle this matter. I'll listen to you. However, as you know, most of the things in the Chang'an and local treasury have been sold. At this time, many merchants are gathered at the entrance of the treasury, looking for a solution. How can this be solved?" Li Shimin was not worried that King Xinla did not know how to save the marine fishes. As a person who grew up by the sea, if he did not have this ability, he would have lived in vain. The most difficult part was how to save the things that had been sold. Otherwise, the trade route? It was just a joke. King Xinla also frowned when he heard this. After pacing around the imperial study for a while, he said, "If Your Majesty trusts me, I dare to send more than 3,000 of my personal guards to help these merchants and save those marine fishes in a short period of time. As for the dead ones, if they are not rotten, I can also restore some of their value." Upon hearing this, Li Shimin was overjoyed. "King Xinla, just tell me, what do you need? I can satisfy you." "Haha." King Xinla laughed heartily. "I don't need anything, just 10 carriages of poisonous salt." Chapter 264. Li Shimin didn't understand the principle behind it. But if Zhang Feng was here, he would definitely know. The poisonous salt was the crystallization of seawater after it dried up naturally. If it was added to water, it would turn ordinary water into seawater. And the dried salted fish made from dead fish would be coveted by people in the future. But Li Shimin didn't care about all this. What he cared about was to control the turmoil in Chang'an and city in the shortest time possible. As for the rest, he didn't care. Even if King Xinla asked Li Shimin to help him kill someone, Li Shimin wouldn't hesitate. In the end, King Xinla left in a hurry. After King Xinla left, Wei Zheng and the others hurried into Taiji Palace. As soon as they entered, Li Shimin said without waiting for the others to salute, "Today, I've found a solution." Hearing this, everyone secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but then frowned again. "Your Majesty, all the trade routes in Chang'an and city have been blocked by Guanlong. How can you find a solution so quickly?" "I think that if Brother Zhang Feng can fly, there will be a turning point in this matter." "Fly? Old man, do your family know that you're so mean to Brother Zhang Feng?" Li Shimin waved his hand. At this time, he was no longer as dignified as before. He slowly took a sip of tea and said, "In fact, it's not so troublesome to fly." Wei Zheng hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, Do you mean to take the trade route? Does your majesty want to use the imperial city guards? Do you want to force open a road? Hearing this, everyone was aghast. This was tantamount to starting a war. If we really start a war with Guanlong, wouldn't we? Everyone's face couldn't help but turn pale at this moment, especially after looking at Li Shimin's expression that everything was under his control. Everyone became even more anxious. Chang'an even gritted his teeth, got down on one knee and said, "Your Majesty, if you need the Imperial City Garrison Army, then this general's battle axe would have rusted long ago. How about letting me lead the army?" "Empress," Li Shimin shook his head slightly. "Don't panic." Hearing this, everyone was even more confused. How could they not panic? He was about to shed all pretense of cordiality with Guanlong. Li Shimin looked at everyone's genuine anxiety and couldn't help but feel the last trace of warmth. In this cold imperial court, at least there are some people who are truly thinking for me and the Tang dynasty. Shen. Li Shimin sounded a little excited. He slowly stood up. When Li Shimin opened his mouth, everyone hurriedly looked at Li Shimin. "We were just as anxious as all of you before, perhaps even less indifferent than all of you. But only now do we truly understand that we are not the only ones in this icy imperial court, but all of you." Zhen is very happy. Hearing this, everyone was even more confused. But since the emperor said so, how could they dare to stand still? They all knelt down in unison. "Your Majesty, we don't deserve it. It's our duty to share your Majesty's worries." Li Shimin waved his hand, motioning everyone to stand up, and then said, "In fact, this matter is not enough to start a war with Guanlong, and it's not enough to fly into the sky or escape into the ground. If Brother Zhang Feng hadn't mentioned this before, I would have forgotten about it. In fact, Chang'an is not a place where there are no mountains and rivers." "What? How is this possible? Your Majesty, now the commercial roads in Chang'an City, Luozhou City, and Liangzhou City are blocked. All goods can't be transported out, and all businessmen are waiting for death. If there is a little way, will they stop here?" Wei Zheng and the others were dumbstruck. The emperor actually said that Chang'an City was not a place where there are no mountains and rivers? If there is a little way, will it be like this? "Your Majesty, if there is a little way to do this, Chang'an, and we just went to ask Yuan Tiangang, and he didn't have a way. I wonder what kind of wonderful method can bring Chang'an back to life, Your Majesty? Bring the dead back to life?" Li Shimin smiled. "I said that Chang'an is not a place where there are no mountains and rivers." Li Shimin also showed off. He had completely forgotten the worried look on his face this morning. "You asked Yuan Tiangang, but did he say why he chose Chang'an as the capital?" Wei Jing thought for a moment, discussed with Fang Xianling and others, and then said, "I remember very clearly that Chang'an City was the place where the dragon veins converged, and there were 8 dragons occupying it, and Chang'an City was the only dragon eye. As long as Chang'an was occupied, the country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace." Li Shimin got up, looked at the crowd, and nodded. "I forgot this sentence before, but today I suddenly heard another statement from Brother Zhang Feng. 8 rivers of Chang'an." Everyone looked at each other, and they were all shocked. 8 rivers or 8 dragons, they all knew. But the emperor said that Chang'an was not a place where there are no mountains and rivers, and now he said 8 rivers. Could it be, did the emperor mean 8 rivers? Was it the way to solve this crisis? Chapter 265. That's right. This is the only way to solve Guanlong's blockade. I didn't think of it before, but when I was chatting with Brother Zhang Feng, he reminded me. The 8 rivers of Chang'an surround Chang'an and converge at the Yellow River. Isn't this a natural trade route? To the west, you can enter the Qinling Mountains, and to the south, you can enter Luozhou. If Guanlong's people had known about this route, I might have paid them a visit today with gifts. But God bless us. The 8 rivers of Chang'an, which we have neglected all this time, unexpectedly became my final solution to Chang'an's crisis. Li Shimin was filled with endless emotions. Wei Zheng and the others were also stunned by what they saw. The 8 rivers of Chang'an. They didn't expect that the final solution would be the 8 rivers of Chang'an. However, the 8 rivers of Chang'an had been abandoned and turned into stinking gutters. It was even worse than the moat of Chang'an city. Could this really solve Chang'an's crisis? Everyone couldn't help but gather together to discuss again. Only then did Wei Jing begin. Your Majesty, although the 8 rivers of Chang'an are good, when the time comes, at least in this old subject's memory, this old subject has never cleaned it up even once. And every time there was a flood in the Qinling Mountains, the river would have been blocked by silt. Can this be used at this time? Your Majesty, this is a matter of great importance. Why don't we send someone to check it out tomorrow and then do something? Du Ruhui also tried to persuade him. Li Shimin waved his hand. He motioned for everyone to be quiet and then fell into deep thought. Someone in the imperial court must know about this matter. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been known by Guanlong's people so quickly. But who was Guanlong's person? Li Shimin didn't know. After all, there were too many people in the imperial court. There were so many that Li Shimin himself felt a headache. Although this matter was targeted by Guanlong, it was better to say that those in the imperial court were targeting him. Li Shimin's fingers dug deeply into his palm under his embroidered robe. The deep pain made him temporarily forget his impulse to clean up the court. Li Shimin lowered his head and closed his eyes, letting everyone see the killing intent in his eyes. A moment later, Li Shimin slowly opened his eyes. There's no need for tomorrow. Tonight, we will have everyone clear out the blockages in these rivers at all costs. Wei Zheng and Zhang Sun Wuji looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. 8 rivers, 1 night? How many people were needed? However, they also heard the implied meaning in Li Shimin's words. There were all kinds of demons and ghosts in the imperial court, and there were also many people with different surnames and 7 looks. The emperor wanted to avoid these people's eyes and ears and then deal with this matter before he was impeached by these people tomorrow morning. But one could imagine the difficulty of this matter. Emperor! At this moment, Qing Yaojin was excited. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, you forgot someone. Hearing this, Li Shimin hurriedly asked, Who? The Navy Commander Zhang Liang. If his navy joins in tonight's action, then this matter is absolutely foolproof. Night action is difficult. Although there is a bright moon at night, if a landlubber who is not familiar with water goes down, it will definitely be a gift to the Water Dragon King. So I'm sure that the Navy will be better at this than anyone else. Hearing this, Li Shimin stood up excitedly and patted Qing Yaojin on the shoulder. How could I forget Zhang Liang? However, at this moment, Li Shimin's excited eyes dimmed again. Zhang Liang's troops are on the coast and near Luozhou. It's too far, not far. Qing Yaojin's face flushed with excitement. He pushed Zhang Sun Wuji away and took Li Shimin to the map on the wall. He pointed to the 8 waterways and said, Your Majesty, you don't know. Although Zhang Liang doesn't have a large army, I went to his house last time when I went to drink with him. Good guys, the yard is full of veterans. They are all good swimmers. These are all his loyal followers. After they retired, they had no place to go, so Zhang Liang kept them in his house. Fortunately, there are 3,000 mu of land. They are the ones who take care of it. But I always feel that it's a pity for these ducks to go ashore. I didn't expect to meet them tonight. Hearing this, Li Shimin couldn't help frowning slightly. In Zhang Liang's house, there were 3,000 retired veterans? What did Zhang Liang want to do? However, at this moment, Li Shimin couldn't help but smile. Patting the agitated Qing Yaojin, he said, Now that you mention it, we do remember. We had forgotten about this group of Navy soldiers who had once cut through all obstacles for the Great Tang. However, 3,000 soldiers aren't enough. You don't know about this, right? Although Zhang Liang is idle at home outside Chang'an city, he is still in charge of recruiting Marines. The place he is at is the training ground for Marines. Last time, when we were drunk, he insisted on dragging me to swim. Good guy, there were tens of thousands of ducks in the dark. Success. Li Shimin's expression changed. He didn't expect that Zhang Liang would inadvertently save him. Pass down the decree. Let Zhang Liang bring all his men to the 8 rivers to clean up the waterways. If the cleanup is completed before dawn, I will personally set up the Chang'an Navy residence and let this group of veterans manage the 8 rivers. Wei Zheng, we command you to personally announce the decree. You must announce it in front of all the Navy soldiers. Wei Zheng's eyes flashed and he hurriedly bowed. Yes, Your Majesty. Chapter 266. In Chang'an City, near Eweimen, the reclining square was a lot more deserted. It was basically a place for retired veterans to enjoy their old age. The premise was that they had to have their own house in Chang'an City. If they didn't have a house, they would be arranged to stay in reclining square. Hence, the name reclining square came about. In the past, it wasn't called reclining square. It was called performing arts square. As many veterans stayed there, people jokingly called it reclining square, a good place to wait for euthanasia. To the west of Xia Reclining Square, near the Qingming Canal, was the mansion of Navy Admiral Zhang Liang. To the side of the mansion was the Qingming Canal. On the shore, there were magnificent buildings. There were docks, small boats, as well as water equipment used for training. In the filthy river, where piles of feces floated down, it seemed so, what was it? On the other side, a large group of dark-skinned, muscular men with tan skin as if they had been smeared with tung oil were following behind each other. A group of middle-aged men, who looked like teachers, had their hands behind their backs and were holding large bamboo poles in their hands. They squinted their eyes and stared at the surface of the water. On the other side, a man was leisurely chanting the number. Many times, even though he had already said 10, he seemed to be suffering from Alzheimer's. The next word he shouted would become 2. Who the F***ck was 2? However, all the dark-skinned men stuck their butts out and buried their heads deep in the water. They didn't dare to poke their heads out. At this time, if any unlucky man dared to poke his head out, what awaited him would be fried meat with bamboo poles in the hands of the veterans. At the highest point of the training ground, Zhang Liang stroked his white beard and squinted his eyes at the butts sticking out of the water. He couldn't help but nod. Not bad. Not bad. The quality of this year's batch is not bad. Old Lin, you've done well. When the salary from the Ministry of Works arrives, I'll reward you with 10 taels of silver. Beside Zhang Liang, a man with a mustache and a face full of pockmarks quickly bowed and said, "Thank you, Commander." Zhang Liang waved his hand. "Since you've already retired, you can just call me Old Master in the future. Do you think I won't dare to talk about this commander-in-chief outside?" Hearing this, Elder Lin hurriedly knelt on the ground, his body trembling with excitement. In this general's heart, you are still the commander-in-chief. It's always one for life. Ha! Good. Zhang Liang helped Old Lin up with great relief. However, at this moment, a nimble servant hurriedly climbed up the 30 zhang high platform and hurriedly reported, "Governor, Duke Zheng is here." Zhang Liang's eyes flashed. He waved his hand and asked, "What's the matter?" "I don't know, but I saw that Lord Protector Zheng had His Majesty's Imperial Edict in his hand and was on his way to the drill ground. That's why I thought it was suspicious and came to report to you in advance." Imperial Edict? Wei Zheng actually came in person? What did he come here for? Zhang Liang was puzzled. The Imperial Edict was usually read by someone from the Department of Internal Servants, and he hadn't received an Imperial Edict for many years. What was the Emperor's intention this time? Of course, Zhang Liang knew what had happened in Chang'an City, but the Emperor had come to him at this time. What was the meaning of this? He couldn't see through it. He waved his hand and said, "Send the message. Everyone stop training and wait for the Imperial Edict." Although he didn't know why. Since the Emperor had issued an Imperial Edict, as an official, he had to accept it. Otherwise, he would be disobeying the Imperial Edict. Moreover, the strange thing was that this time, Wei Zheng didn't read the Imperial Edict in the mansion but came to the drill ground. Could it be? Did the Emperor know that there were veterans in his mansion? But His Majesty knew about this. Although he didn't know the exact number, he didn't hide it. Strange. All of this was very strange. When Zhang Liang came to the drill ground, a group of greasy black men were standing in line, panting. Wei Zheng's voice sounded not far away. "Brother Zhang. Long time no see." Zhang Liang hurriedly cupped his fists when he heard that. Prime Minister Wei. I wonder what brings you here today? We haven't seen each other for almost half a year. Let's go to the mansion and have a drink. Wei Jing, who was wearing a red robe, sighed. Let's wait for the next time. This time, I'm here to read the imperial edict of the emperor. Brother Zhang, shall we accept the imperial edict? But Zhang Liang cupped his fists. Then, the eunuch from the Minister of Internal Affairs behind Wei Jing screamed, The imperial edict is here. Zhang Liang, accept the imperial edict. All kneel. Bush. In an instant, the swarthy men all knelt down in unison. Even Wei Jing was a little shocked. Are these all the soldiers of the Tang dynasty? But his eyes flashed. Wei Jing's expression suddenly changed. He read the imperial edict. By the will of the heavens, the emperor says. Today, I learned that Minister Zhang has 3,000 retired soldiers. This is my mistake. I forgot that you have made great contributions to the Tang dynasty. Zhang Liang's expression changed. The expressions of all the Marines present, especially those veterans, changed greatly. There were even some old soldiers who were trembling all over at this moment. The emperor didn't forget us. But at this moment, Wei Zheng's voice sounded again. I intend to set up a navy mansion in Chang'an. Today, I have a request for all of you. Tomorrow morning, clear out 8 rivers that can carry ships. If you complete the task, I will appoint the person you choose as the steward of the navy mansion. From now on, he will be responsible for managing the 8 dragon veins in Chang'an. Hearing that, a mouthful of blood spurted out of Zhang Liang's mouth, and he completely fainted. Chapter 267. Wei Jing sighed after announcing the imperial edict. Someone, summon the imperial physician. Quick, send Governor Zhang back to his residence and take good care of him. Wei Jing knew that this would happen today. If it weren't for this incident and the emperor's desire to clean up the 8 rivers, Zhang Liang's actions would have led to his demise. Now, Zhang Liang fainted, which was the best outcome. The emperor had only transferred all the navy veterans around him. Otherwise, if this incident were to spread to the ears of other officials, the imperial edict he was waiting for today would not be just this. It would be a crime of rebellion. The emperor allowed all the generals of the Tang dynasty to have private soldiers, but the number could only be controlled at 500. If the number exceeded this number, a light punishment would be a punishment, and a heavy punishment would be a crime. Zhang Liang taking in this group of veterans seemed to be a kind act, but when combined with his recruitment of new soldiers in Chang'an and the 3,000 veterans, how terrifying was this? If he had the slightest bit of disloyalty, he only needed to wave his hand gently, and all the waterways around Chang'an and along the Chao River would go straight to Taiji Palace. How terrifying was this? Would the emperor allow this? Would the officials allow this, especially when the veterans who were good at swimming were sleeping soundly beside the bed? Absolutely not. That was why Wei Jing sighed when he saw Zhang Liang vomiting blood and fainting. When Cheng Yaojin mentioned this incident, he had already seen the killing intent in the emperor's eyes. However, because of the current situation, the emperor did not say anything. However, there was no guarantee that the emperor would not settle accounts after this. Hopefully, Governor Zhang could understand the emperor's difficulties. Wei Jing watched Zhang Liang leave before he continued, and Lu Feng. What an excellent and Lu Feng. Before coming here, the old man did not know that this place had been renamed An Lu Feng. He also saw the situation here with his own eyes. The old and the weak who retired from the years of war, the imperial court neglected you. This is our fault. Wei Jing sighed deeply and then bowed deeply in front of the frightened eyes of all the soldiers. Prime Minister Wei. Prime Minister Wei is actually bowing to us bumpkins? Everyone had tears in their eyes. Someone even knelt on the ground with a choked voice. Prime Minister Wei, you mustn't. Prime Minister Wei, you mustn't. We're all bumpkins with no status. You're torturing us by doing this. Minister Wei. Wei Jing waved his hand. He gestured for everyone to rise. However, everyone still refused to get up no matter what. Wei Jing could only sigh and say, This bow is this official returning justice to all of you on behalf of the people of the world. This is your honor. This is the glory you've earned as soldiers. If you hadn't sacrificed your lives to protect the Tang dynasty and shed your blood for the founding of the Tang dynasty, how could the Tang dynasty flourish now? This official only wants to say one thing: His Majesty has not forgotten you. The people of the world have not forgotten you. Wei Zheng's voice was choking. As for the soldiers present, they all started to cry. Once upon a time, they had dreamed that one day they would be recognized. But after the war ended, when they returned to their homes, they discovered that there was nothing left. Their relatives, neighbors, playmates that they had grown up with, and so on, were all gone. They had knelt in their homeland and cried bitterly. They had been lost and did not even know where to go. However, at that moment, the commander-in-chief had given them a home that could not be considered a home. It had been a few years, but the former emperor had not promised them a reward in Chang'an city. They had given up because they also knew that the Tang dynasty had just been established and needed an opportunity to develop. They had waited for a few years. Today, the emperor finally remembered them. How could they not be excited? Moreover, he had even set up a navy residence in Chang'an for them. What was that? That was an honor bestowed upon them by the emperor. It was a department set up by the emperor himself, and it was dedicated solely to the emperor. At that moment, they suddenly felt that their backs were straightened. They were no longer wandering ghosts. At that moment, they finally found the right to walk freely in their neighborhood and on Chang'an street with an identity tag hanging on their waists. They were also people with an organization and status. Everyone wept bitterly once again. Even the cries here attracted the old and weak soldiers who were waiting to die in the reclining square. After they heard this news, their originally numb eyes suddenly shone with a light of excitement once again. We found our goal. The emperor has not forgotten us. The Tang dynasty has not forgotten us. Wei Zheng looked at the vast expanse of dark, tower-like men who were suffering under the scorching sun like children. He also choked with sobs. Those were the soldiers who had once exchanged their lives for the peace of the world. Wei Zheng had an impulse many times. He really wanted to grab those people in the court who opposed the soldiers and see if they could still be in the court peacefully if it were not for those bumpkin soldiers. Wei Zheng sighed deeply. The imperial censor and the eunuchs of the Minister of Internal Affairs behind him also fell silent. They lowered their heads and hurriedly recorded everything they saw. After a while, when the cries and venting voices had subsided a little, Wei Zheng shouted loudly, "The emperor has not forgotten the brothers who fought with him to build the Tang dynasty. It's just that the Tang dynasty has encountered some troubles now, and the emperor has no time to care about you. But now, your opportunity has come. Now, you all know what happened in Chang'an city, right? It's a trap. This is a test given by God to the Tang dynasty. Therefore, the emperor needs the brothers who fought with him in the past." Everyone was jealous. They roared at the top of their lungs, "I'm willing to climb the mountain of swords again for the emperor and die 1,000 times for him." Good. Wei Zheng nodded and pointed to the stinky river beside them. "This is your new battlefield. His Majesty wants all of you to clean up these 8 rivers before dawn tomorrow. Can you do it? Even if we have to pay with our lives, we will make the water in these 8 rivers clear before dawn tomorrow." Good. Then let's go. The emperor is waiting for your new battle report in Taiji Palace. Sir. Chapter 268. Everyone, the Marines, the veterans watching from the shore, and the soldiers who were missing arms and legs, without waiting for anyone to give the order, jumped into the water with a splash. They used their hands or tools to clean up the muddy, stinky water with all their might. At the beginning, only tens of thousands of soldiers were doing it. But as the battle dragged on, the people of Chang'an were alarmed. After hearing Wei Zheng's words, he couldn't sit still anymore. The emperor was in danger. That was also the crisis of Chang'an city. At this time, the emperor even asked Prime Minister Wei to bow in order to lift the blockade of Chang'an city. How could their status be higher than Prime Minister Wei's? What was Prime Minister Wei? He was the emperor's official. He bowed to these bumpkins and even the slaves. In other words, Prime Minister Wei represented the emperor and bowed to all the bumpkins in the world. The men of the Tang dynasty were very simple. They were also very emotional. Although this was only said to the veterans, who were these veterans? They were all people just like them. Some of them were even missing arms and legs. They were more healthy than these people, right? If the emperor could jump into the smelly ditch where they washed their urinals, clothes, and vegetables to clean up the muddy water for them, how could they sit still? Unless his skin was thicker than the city walls. Therefore, on all the streets, groups of old men with crutches were beating gongs to spread the news. As long as they were not bedridden, they should King go to the river to clean up the muddy water for Lao Tzu. Who would not go? Get out of Chang'an. Because they did not deserve to be called Chang and people. The people of Chang and were all King cowards. Why did the emperor do this? Was it not to let the people live a more comfortable life? If the river was cleaned up, everything would be better, right? At the very least, they could wash the chamber pots. No, in such a clean river, who the CK dared to wash the chamber pots? Lao Tzu would be the first to tear him apart. The men of Guangzhou were so stubborn. When they said that they were going to clean up the muddy water in front of their own homes, who the CK could sit still? She was so embarrassed that she panicked. Then, from old men in their 80s to children in their 20s or 13 years old, they all carried it on their shoulders. Then, carrying the basket, he jumped into the river and joined the ranks of those who were cleaning the river. The army in charge of clearing the river started from around 5 p.m. to around sunset. The number of people involved in clearing the river had increased from the initial tens of thousands to more than 100,000. In the end, even if no one reminded them, the merchants could no longer sit still. How embarrassing! The commoners had all gone to clean up the river. Even if they shouted themselves hoarse, no one came to look at their goods. They were even met with disdainful looks from the commoners. Could they sit still? They had poured more feces and urine into the river than the commoners, right? He was cleaning up after them. Aren't they ashamed? Even the ancestors of the family couldn't sit still, so this broom ran out and pointed at their noses, scolding them until their parents panicked. As a matter of fact, all the merchants were urging their servants to jump into the smelly ditch to dig out the feces themselves. In the setting sun, Li Shimin stood in the attic of the third floor of the sleeping palace. He looked at the rivers in the setting sun that were originally dazzling like silver ribbons. At this time, they had become pitch black. The veins on the back of his hand that was holding the railing were exposed. Guanyin servant, do you think these 8 rivers can really solve this crisis? Li Shimin muttered to Zhang Sun Wugo, who was also looking into the distance behind him. Zhang Sun Wugo pursed her lips and grabbed Li Shimin's hand. She said softly, "Second brother, actually you already have the answer in your heart, right?" The answer? Li Shimin lowered his gaze and looked silently at that slender hand. At this time, there was still a thimble on her hand. Suddenly, Li Shimin remembered that the shoes he had been wearing this year, as well as the shoes worn by the crown prince and the other princes, were all made by his empress. The palace was not so poor that they could not even afford to wear shoes. However, in order to save money, Empress Zhang Sun still insisted on sewing and making shoes by herself. Li Shimin suddenly felt very tired. He felt ashamed to face Zhang Sun Wugo. In these 2 years, he had been dealing with one problem after another, but he had neglected the person by his side. He was not a qualified husband. As for whether he was a qualified monarch or not, he was a little confused at this time. Since the Wei River Alliance half a year ago, he had been dispirited. He was at a loss when the court was full of impeachment. It was not until the appearance of Zhang Feng that he found a glimmer of light to revive the Tang dynasty. But, when he was in a hurry to prepare for a big fight, he turned his head and found that there was still a sharp blade hanging over his head. 5 surnames and 7 hopes. This fierce tiger that made him afraid finally showed its ferocious teeth this time. He was very afraid. He was very afraid that everything he had done would be turned into ashes with a wave of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Alas! Li Shimin sighed deeply. Rubbing Zhang Sun Wugo's hand, he looked at the red sunset and murmured, "How could I not want to have the answer in my heart?" Chapter 269. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. Guzi, Zhu Zi, and the others who liked to surround him, as well as old He and the others, had all disappeared. Just as he was taking an afternoon nap under the crooked tree, the people on the street seemed to have suddenly disappeared without a trace. What was going on? Where were they? Zhang Feng stood at the entrance of the empty market, grabbing his hair and looking at the empty street with a dumbfounded expression. He was completely dumbfounded. What the hell? Could it be that Lao Tzu was sleepwalking? Or was it a dream? Zhang Feng was really dumbfounded. Even the old scholar who had been squatting under the big willow tree at the entrance of the street, which was big enough for 3 adults to surround, was nowhere to be seen. Other than a dream, was there any other explanation? Quick, you motherf asterisk cur, other people are cleaning the river, but you motherf asterisk cur, hiding in the house and sleeping in the middle of the day? Aren't you ashamed? Your father, he's 72 years old, and he's already carrying a hoe into the river. You, a strong young man, are hiding in the house and sleeping? No, sir, please do me a favor. I still have to work at night. I just got off work today. Just let me sleep for a while. Sleep? Why don't you sleep yourself to death? What time is it now? You motherf asterisk cur, it's almost 9 o'clock. Quick, don't talk nonsense, 2 hours is enough for you to clean up the river's feces. Amidst the waves of cursing and begging, Zhang Feng stared at an old man in the market who was pulling the night watchman's ear and walking over. Zhang Feng hurriedly went forward, clasped his hands and asked, "Sir, you said you were going to clean the river? These people are going to clean the river?" When the old man saw that it was Zhang Feng, he put away the anger on his face and grinned. "Well, it's because we've dirted the river, so the emperor sent those old and weak soldiers to clean the river. How could we stand by and watch? It's so embarrassing." So we all spontaneously joined in. "You rest, I'm going." Zhang Feng usually taught those little brats how to read. This already shocked everyone. As slaves, how could they afford to hire a teacher? Moreover, it was Sir who took the initiative to teach their child. There must be smoke rising from their ancestral graves. In addition, Zhang Feng was usually generous and generous. Basically, every family had received his kindness, so they would not allow Zhang Feng to go to such a matter. Even if Zhang Feng went, he would definitely be carried back in a matter of minutes. Who was Zhang Feng? That was the best person in the entire city. Moreover, he was a peerless talent. Who would dare to ask him to wash sand in the river? If anyone dared to do so, there would be a group of red-eyed people who would go up and break their legs. Zhang Feng was very depressed. But he was also very curious. This Lao Li's speed was really fast. How long had it been? 6 hours? Or 4 hours? How could he encourage so many people to take the initiative to wash the river? Zhang Feng did not believe in heresy. He paced around the crowd and quietly followed them to the Dragon Head West Canal, which was near the Department of Justice near the Spring Bright Gate. Before he reached the river, he could already hear the clamor of shouting and waves of stench. The river channel was clogged all year round. If it was not cleaned up for a long time, then it would be fine. It was only when one walked in that the stench would come. But if someone were to wash it here, then the stench would definitely reach the sky. Zhang Feng pinched his nose and stuck his head out from a small alley behind a tailor shop. His eyes widened. What the hell? Good guy. He saw that in the river channel, everyone was bare-chested, sticking their butts out as they dug the mud. A group of old Navy soldiers were like loaches, diving into the water. As long as they found something hard, they would immediately stick the willow branches in their hands there. In an instant, dozens of people would rush up as if they wanted to empty the bottom of the river. On the shore, there were all kinds of porcelain fragments, or even intact chamber pots, porcelain, rusty arrow shafts, crossbows, broadswords and bronze swords. They were all casually thrown on the shore. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was drooling. If this was in the future, then these would be priceless treasures. Especially one of the scabbard that was shining with golden light, it made Zhang Feng unable to move his eyes away. This thing was either something that came along with it, or something that was left behind by an important person in some dynasty. This kind of treasure was a scabbard made of pure gold. These simple people, however, did not fight over it. If this was in the future, damn, even a broken tile would be picked up by people in minutes. How could they still see it? At that moment, An old voice rang out from behind Zhang Feng. You're right. You're right. But isn't this shopkeeper Zhang? Zhang Shanren, what are you doing here? This place stinks to the heavens. If you get stained by it, it won't be good. Quickly leave. Zhang Feng was also stunned. Old man, I also want to help. You are all busy, I am just a strong young man. No. The old man was angry. He shouted, Someone come. Zhang Shanren is here. A few young men, come and carry Zhang Shanren back. In this place, we cannot let Zhang Shanren's body be stained. Zhang Feng's face darkened. He was really carried away by a few strong men on their shoulders, as if they were carrying a sack. Chapter 270. Dong, dong, dong. With the sound of 3 morning bells. At the dawn of the east, the civil and military officials, after going through layers of inspection in front of the Vermilion Bird Gate, slowly entered the Vermilion Bird Avenue. All the officials had a heavy heart at this time, but there was a group of people who were staring sharply at Wei Zheng and the others, who were standing at the front of the line. If looks could kill, Wei Zheng and the others would have been killed thousands of times. These people were the officials of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Last night, they received a secret letter from the Guanlong group. They impeached Fang Xianling for taking advantage of the responsibility of the Ministry of Works to tamper with the currency without authorization. They impeached Zhang Sun Wuji for colluding with the officials and merchants, which led to the current chaos in Chang'an. They impeached the emperor for ignoring the expectations of the people of the world and using all the silver in the national treasury to buy the so-called seafood from Zhenla without authorization. That kind of thing is absolutely disgusting to look at. This was the emperor's doing? If it wasn't for Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and Zhang Sun Wuji urging, would the emperor be like this? These people should be killed. At this time, Wei Zheng and the others didn't seem to see the eyes of these people. Several people exchanged glances and entered the political announcement hall. Today, the atmosphere in the political announcement hall was a bit strange. No one was like before, whispering in 2s and 3s. It was as if they didn't see the actions of hundreds of thousands of people in Chang'an last night. In this strange atmosphere, Cheng Yaojin finally couldn't resist the feeling of having a knife on his back. The natural military blood made him explode. But just as he was about to burst out, Wei Jing grabbed his hand and shook his head slightly. The emperor arrives. With the eunuch's shout, everyone hurriedly knelt and shouted in unison, Welcome the emperor. Long live the emperor. Li Shimin walked out of the back hall amidst the cheers of the officials. However, this time, Li Shimin did not step onto the 9 steps to heaven's staircase. Instead, he slowly walked to the top of the hall and surveyed the crowd. Wei Jing nodded slightly, and Li Shimin's expression finally relaxed. His bloodshot eyes finally let go of the last bit of worry. Last night, Li Shimin did not sleep at all. He couldn't sleep. He didn't dare to sleep until he received news of the 8 Rivers Channel. This was because he knew that something was bound to happen at the morning court. But after seeing Wei Zheng's affirmation, Li Shimin was finally relieved. Everyone rise. Thank you, Your Majesty. Everyone stood up. However, there were still a dozen officials who remained kneeling on the ground. A murderous intent flashed in Li Shimin's eyes as he asked, Minister of Taichung Temple, what are you waiting for? The Minister of Taichung Temple and the others hurriedly knelt and said, Your Majesty, we have something to report. Your Majesty, Cui Fengjun, the imperial astronomer, has something to report. The Cui family. Proved. Li Shimin's eyes flashed slightly. It seemed that the 8 noble families of Guanlong were on the same side after all. Cui Fengjun, the imperial astronomer, heard the words and said first, Your Majesty, I have been observing the sky at night and found that Mars shone brightly in the night sky, even brighter than the moon. There must be a demon bewitching people. What? Mars guarding the heart? Heavens! Could it be that the disaster in Chang'an was caused by this calamity? Hearing this, all the officials whispered in horror. Li Shimin smiled coldly. He looked at Cui Fengjun with interest and asked, Then tell me, what kind of demon is bewitching me? This, Cui Fengjun hesitated. However, he continued, Your Majesty, I'm sure you know that once the Antares Heart Guardian is activated, there will definitely be a great calamity. The Imperial Astronomer has been calculating for the past few days, but alas, a calamity still appeared in Chang'an, so you are saying that it is my fault? How did the disaster in Chang'an happen? Are the people saying that they are fools who do not know who did it? You, the Imperial Astronomer, are saying that this is Mars guarding the heart? Then I would like to ask you, is this man's fault or is it the fault of the heavens? Li Shimin was furious. He could no longer hide his murderous intent. Cui Fengjun trembled. The members of the Imperial Astronomer behind him, the members of the 5 noble families and the Guanlong group, all fell to their knees. Your Majesty, this man is Prime Minister Wei. We have seen it with our own eyes at the Imperial Astronomer. All the divination points to one person, and that is Prime Minister Wei. If not for Prime Minister Wei cursing Your Majesty in court, he would have entered the imperial harem many times. This is something that has been strictly forbidden in every dynasty, but Prime Minister Wei and his people turned a blind eye to it and still swaggered into the imperial harem. We do not know why Prime Minister Wei would go to the imperial harem so casually, but this matter must have triggered Mars guarding the heart and caused the disaster in Chang'an. Moreover, this incident in Chang'an started from a rumor. How could the people on the trade route so easily shut down the trade route? This is obviously because everyone has seen Mars guarding the heart and is afraid of Chang'an. That is why they are avoiding it. At this time, only by killing Prime Minister Wei, who has caused chaos in the imperial harem, can the world be at peace. Are you asking me to cut off my own limbs? Very good. Very good. Li Shimin was so angry that he laughed. Wei Jing, on the other hand, was still standing there without saying a word. Li Shimin looked around at the people kneeling on the ground and asked, "Is this what all of you think?" The Taichung temple chief and the others hurriedly said, "We have some spies in Chang'an, and have seen Prime Minister Wei, Lord Zhangsun, General Cheng, and the others frequently go out of the city in disguise. We even saw, Your Majesty. Therefore, we think that it is not right to punish them for this matter." Good. Very good. Is there anyone else who thinks so? Li Shimin shouted angrily. In an instant, a large number of people knelt again. Even the warlords of the Guanlong group in the north knelt when the generals knelt. At this time, there were only about 30 people who were still standing. In the end, Li Shimin's fury could not be extinguished. Just as Li Shimin was about to order the arrest of these people, Fang Xianling suddenly shouted, "Your Majesty, I have something to report." Chapter 271. The person who had been silent all this while. Finally he spoke. Moreover, he was the person that the officials had been impeaching. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but want to hear what Fang Xianling had to say. Originally, the Ministry of Works was a department controlled by people with different surnames. However, the emperor stood his ground and insisted on letting Fang Xianling come. Wasn't this cutting off other people's source of income? How could this be? Among the hundreds of officials, at least 70 of them were kneeling. They were sure that the emperor wouldn't dare to touch them. After all, they were backed by 2 powerful figures. Li Shimin wouldn't dare. But at this moment, Fang Xianling came out. Everyone couldn't help but look up and look at Fang Xianling and the others with a playful expression. They wanted to see what Fang Xianling had to say. Fang Xianling bowed first and then said loudly, "As for the matters that you have mentioned, I have a different opinion." "Let's hear it." Li Shimin waved his hand and put down the butcher's knife in his heart. "I think that the reform at this time is also a disguised form of benefiting the people. Although the trade routes outside are blocked, it allows all merchants to unleash their potential under such circumstances. I have seen those merchants in Chang'an Market. Many of them didn't panic and didn't suffer any losses. Instead, they made a lot of money. As for the new currency, I also have to report to the emperor. All the currency is transported by horse carriage. Not only is it tedious and cumbersome, but it is also easy to wear and tear. The speed of transactions is greatly reduced. Therefore, the emergence of a new currency is inevitable. I have already seen the results of this in Chang'an. Therefore, I think that both of these matters are correct. As for the sealing of the trade routes, Those are just words to confuse the people. Fang Xianling stroked his white beard and stared at Taichang Temple Chief Eugenian. Lord Yu, were you going to talk about these matters just now? As the chief of Taichang Temple, you don't go to the people to understand. Instead, you talk nonsense in the court. Tell me, are you trying to confuse the people with your lies? Eugenian stood up, neither servile nor overbearing. He bowed and took out a booklet from his bosom. Your Majesty, this is the result of my investigation in Chang'an. No need. Li Shimin didn't even look at him. Yesterday, I received the results of the Imperial Guard's investigation in Chang'an, as well as the Crown Prince. Therefore, I will naturally distinguish who is right and who is wrong. Prime Minister Wei, they say that Antares guards the heart. Don't you have anything to say? Li Shimin was very angry. How could Wei Jing still be able to stand at a time like this? If it weren't for Fang Xianling, Ma would have already killed him. When Wei Jing heard this, he replied calmly, Your Majesty, this old subject doesn't know what to say. I don't understand what they're talking about. I only know that the heavens are watching. As for Mars being the guardian of the planet, this subject has nothing to say about the face of the imperial astronomer, even if it is forced upon the evil deed of sealing off the trade routes in Chang'an. Wei Zheng, don't be presumptuous. The imperial astronomer was established by the emperor to observe the celestial phenomena. Don't anger the heavens. If the heavens punish, no need. At this moment, Wei Jing waved his hand lightly. Just last night, the old man and Lord Yuan Tiangang talked all night, but he didn't say anything. Do you think your knowledge has surpassed Mr. Yuan's? This, Cui Fengjun was speechless. But he blinked and said, How can we compare with Mr. Yuan's talent? He must have been held hostage by you. That's why he said such things. Is that so? Li Shimin wanted to laugh. He waved his hand and said, Yuan Tonggang is here. Cui Fengjuan's face completely changed. Even the faces of all the people kneeling in the court changed at this time. They had calculated everyone and everything, but this Yuan Tiangang, with unfathomable skills and knowledge, was highly valued by the emperor. He only served the emperor on weekdays. Even if they wanted to visit him, they had no way to do so. In the words of Yuan Tiangang, they didn't deserve to visit him. But now, it was the fact that Antares was guarding the heart. What would Yuan Tiangang say? Just when everyone's mind was turning rapidly, a grayish-black man with a black and white 8 trigrams pattern on his body, holding a Buddha whisk in his hand, and a Tai Chi yin-yang pattern on his grayish-white hair bun, walked into the hall with a gesture. Yuan Tiangang didn't look at the people kneeling on the ground. He just gave a slight salute to the emperor. Boundless Lord of Heaven, I pay my respects to the emperor. Because I'm checking how to get rid of the filth in the palace, I ask the emperor to forgive me for my rudeness. Li Shimin's expression eased slightly. He waved his hand lightly, Get up at once. Now some people say that Antares was guarding the heart because Prime Minister Wei went in and out of the harem many times, which led to the closure of the trade route in Chang'an, and by evil people. What does Mr. Yuan think of this matter? Antares was guarding the heart. Yuan Tiangang was stunned. Your Majesty, I usually meditate on the roof at night. Why don't I see Antares was guarding the heart? Is there another master in the world? No. Li Shimin smiled slightly. He pointed to Cui Fengjun of the Imperial Astronomer and said, It was Lord Cui of the Imperial Astronomer who said that there was a demon in the palace. It was Prime Minister Wei. Hearing that, Yuan Tiangang was amused. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I can't help laughing. I really don't understand why the Imperial Astronomer said so. I've been observing the celestial phenomena during this time. The celestial phenomena are indeed abnormal. The Ziwei star is shining, but it is a little similar to Antares. Didn't Lord Cui see this in the ancient books of the Imperial Astronomer? Your Majesty, the Ziwei star is in the world, and the person is in the market of Chang'an. He is an extraordinary person who hasn't appeared for thousands of years. We think that he will definitely solve the crisis this time when the city is sealed. Li Shimin was shocked. Wei Zheng and others were also shocked. How the F*ck could he have foreseen this? Was Yuan Tiangang a god? The Ziwei star, wasn't that brother Zhang Feng? This time, he really was the one who resolved the crisis. Thinking of this, Li Shimin smiled. He looked around and said, Master Yuan is right about this matter. The Ziwei star has appeared. I was almost fooled by your stupidity. Men, drag Cui Fengjun out and punish him with 30 strokes of the cane. There is one more thing that I forgot to mention. What about the city being sealed? Has Chang'an been sealed? Wait and see if the overstocked caravans in Chang'an will be sealed in the city. I will remember this account. When the crisis in Chang'an is over, I will have a good talk with you about today's misleading people. Court is dismissed. Chapter 272. The crisis was lifted? So fast? This time, Yuan Tiangang was also shocked. He had not slept for 2 days because of this matter. He had been investigating how to solve the crisis in Chang'an. However, except for the appearance of the Ziwei star, all the clues revolved around this Ziwei star. Did the emperor find this Ziwei star? If not, how could the emperor solve the crisis in Chang'an city so quickly? According to the 9 changes 8 diagrams, all the channels in Chang'an city were blocked. This, as he walked, Yuan Tiangang ignored the greetings of the crowd. His hands were quickly making seals. However, today's seal made Yuan Tiangang surprised. Because the seal this time, in the land of death yesterday, there was actually a glimmer of light. This, Yuan Tiangang was shocked. Dilemma, what was the solution to the dilemma? Yuan Tiangang thought hard and searched in his heart. He even used the 5 elements algorithm that he didn't want to use the most. Finally, he stood on the Suzaka Bridge in horror and looked at the rolling water under his feet. Water. The solution to the crisis in the imperial city is actually water. Right, water is good at healing. It is supposed to clean up the blockage. This hexagram is full of blockage, but there is a trace of water machine. Is this? Yuan Tiangang couldn't help but think of the sensational thing that happened in Chang'an yesterday afternoon. Basically, the entire Chang'an city was involved in a huge project to clean up the river. Although everyone said that it was to clean up the river, make the river clear and beautiful, the emperor thought that these rivers affected the beauty. However, judging from the hexagram at this time, it didn't seem to be as simple as imagined. But as for what was not simple, he couldn't tell. Is this the solution to the crisis in Chang'an? But these 8 rivers, 8 dragon veins. How to solve the crisis? Yuan Tiangang walked away in confusion. In the deep palace of Taiji Palace, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Zhang Sun Wuji, Qing Yaojin, and others sat together again and drank tea slowly. It was as if everything that had happened in the main hall had nothing to do with them. A few moments later, Li Shimin returned to Taiji Palace in high spirits. As soon as they entered the door, Li Shimin waved his hand and asked everyone to sit down. Then he said, This time, we have openly fallen out with the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs, as well as the Guanlong 8 tribes. Is the river channel really cleaned up this time? Reporting to your majesty. Wei Zheng stood up and bowed. Everything is ready. Last night, the Navy veterans used dozens of boats of different weights to test the river. There was no obstruction at all. All right. Li Shimin waved his robe. Then immediately arrange this matter for me. I want to see all the people of the caravan evacuate from Chang'an before tonight. As you command. Everyone left in a hurry. In the end, Li Shimin stopped Qing Yaojin and said, General Cheng, this time, I have to trouble you to send your most capable men to personally escort along the way and cooperate with the veterans to ensure the safety of the people along the way. If anyone blocks them, kill them. Qing Yaojin heard this and hurriedly saluted. Your Majesty, leave this matter to me. You can rest assured. But there is one thing that I don't understand. Speak. Li Shimin sat next to Qing Yaojin and asked, If there are people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs or people of Guanlong blocking the way, should I fight or not? This, Li Shimin frowned. This time, if he fought, it was tantamount to completely falling out with Guanlong. Now was not the time. But if he didn't fight, what would he do if he encountered them? This was something that Li Shimin hadn't thought of. Although there were many dangerous rivers along the way, these were not a problem. If Cheng Yaojin could deal with them, and with the tens of thousands of navy, they would definitely be able to deal with them. However, Li Shimin was still a little hesitant about Guanlong. To fight or not to fight? This was the main problem now. Your Majesty, I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it. At this moment, little Gizi said hesitantly. Li Shimin's eyes lit up. The reason why little Gizi had always been by his side was that he had followed him since he was young, so there was no need to worry about his loyalty. More importantly, he was intelligent. If it weren't for the fact that eunuchs couldn't participate in politics, Li Shimin would have promoted him to an official long ago. Now that little Gizi had spoken, Li Shimin couldn't help but be interested. Your Majesty, I think that if we disguise General Cheng's subordinates as the guards of these merchants, wouldn't that work? Moreover, the people of the military are straightforward and rough, very similar to those servants. They are suitable for fighting in all kinds of terrains and can form all kinds of battle formations at any time. If each merchant group is accompanied by 30 guards, we can ensure that this matter will be foolproof. Proved. Li Shimin didn't even think about it. He directly clapped his hands and made the decision. Cheng Yaojin's eyes also revealed a look of understanding. He got up and cupped his fists, saying, I will go now. With the identity of a guard, I am not afraid of anything. Chapter 273. In Zhang Feng's shop. At this moment, Uncle He, Zhu Zi's father, and the best matchmaker in the city were all sitting together in his small tavern, looking at Zhang Feng meaningfully. Zhang Feng's head was about to explode. 3 jugs of wine had already been served. Several plates of dishes had been eaten. He even saw the matchmaker kick a large plate of meat into her pocket. However, they had been sitting there for 4 hours and still had no intention of leaving. How could Zhang Feng not know their purpose for coming? What could they do when the matchmaker was here? Uncle He seemed to think that Zhang Feng's brain was too slow and could only wave his hand to stop him from wiping the counter that was about to be torn. Fengzi, come and sit down. The old elementary scholar will be here soon. Zhang Feng was a little afraid of the old elementary scholar. There was no other reason than that mouth of hers. He couldn't stand it. Why would the old elementary scholar come here for no reason? Zhang Feng continued to play dumb, but he also knew that he could not avoid it. He helplessly hung his head and sat on the table. At this moment, the matchmaker stared at Zhang Feng and clicked her tongue. Her mouth was like a cricket's and Zhang Feng almost slapped her. After looking at him for a long time, the matchmaker finally nodded and seemed satisfied. After a while, the old elementary scholar strode into the small tavern and pushed Zhang Feng away with a slap. He sat on Zhang Feng's stool and poured himself a bowl of wine. After drinking a bowl of food happily, he said, I went to see that family. They accepted the gift and I also met their daughter. She is very beautiful and can give birth to a son. Wait. Zhang Feng exploded. He hurriedly asked, Old elementary scholar, you want to get married? Which family's daughter is blind? No, I mean she has such a good eye for a gentleman and likes you? The old elementary scholar's face immediately darkened. He glared at Zhang Feng but did not argue. Old man is thinking for you. Originally, old man thought that by finding a marriage for you, he could get a free drink in the future. Now it seems that this is what Zhang Feng thinks of the old man? No, no, no. How can that be? You're an old man of great talent and wealth. I'm afraid I can't even catch up to you. Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on. Old man continued to flatter the old scholar, but the old scholar didn't seem to hear him. He talked to the matchmaker in a low voice for a while, then slowly took out a jade pendant from his chest and sighed. This jade pendant was originally prepared by old man's mother for my future wife, but I'm all alone now and I'm afraid there's no hope. So I'll leave it to you, brat. Take it as a congratulatory gift from old man. Don't refuse. This piece of jade is rumored to be an antique from the Qin dynasty. The old scholar's heart ached. Zhang Feng had a headache. Damn it, did they ask for my permission? Lao Tzu hadn't even met that girl, and they already arranged this? *CK. Uncle could tolerate this, but Lao Tzu couldn't. Old man, wait. Zhang Feng hurriedly snatched the jade pendant from the matchmaker's hand and put it away. I appreciate your kindness, But this matter is about the parents' orders and the matchmaker's words. I've done my research. Your family members are all gone in the flood and landslide. That means that you're the only heir of the Zhang family. Then this is easy. Since you don't have parents, and we respect you so much, then we'll consider ourselves your elders and help you. Matchmaker? This is the best matchmaker we've found in Chang. When old woman Wang heard that she was going to be a matchmaker for you, she didn't even ask for the money. That's right. Brother Zhang. To be a matchmaker for such a kind person like you is a blessing that I, old woman Wang, have cultivated for 8 lifetimes. Don't think too much about it. I'm quite famous in Chang and city, so don't worry about this marriage. Since the girl's family has agreed to it, it'll definitely happen. Success my ass. Lao Tzu had agreed to it a few moments ago. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. Uncle He, Father Zhuzi, Old Man Wang, I appreciate your kindness, but I've promised my family and my master that if I don't make a name for myself, or if I don't meet someone I truly like, I, Zhang Feng, would rather be a bachelor for the rest of my life than bring shame to my family's name or bring shame to my master's reputation. This, the old scholar was shocked. However, at this moment, Zhang Feng took out a jade pendant that he had gotten from Prince Jinla. That was a supreme-grade purple jade. It was so dazzling that it hurt everyone's eyes. The purple jade was engraved with a hollowed-out pattern of a phoenix seeking a phoenix. A string of gold particles was attached to the pendant, which made the jade pendant look very magical. Zhang Feng sighed and said, "This is the treasure that my master bestowed upon me. Do you believe me now?" The old scholar was in a dilemma. He had forgotten about Zhang Feng's mysterious master. If it wasn't for his guidance, how could Zhang Feng have such achievements in literature at the age of 20? Whether it was the wine, dishes, food, or even the fine salt, all of them were easy to handle. Since his master had spoken, what could they do? In the end, they fiddled with it in a low voice, shook their heads, and sighed before leaving. However, when they reached the door, the old scholar's face darkened and he reached out to take back his jade pendant. Just when Zhang Feng thought that this matter was over, the old scholar hurriedly asked, "What's your master's name?" Chapter 274. In Li Shimin's palace. It was rare for Li Shimin to have a good sleep. After yesterday's morning court, he was in a good mood. He drank a jar of Zhang Feng's wine with Yuan Tiangang and left after Yuan Tiangang repeatedly praised it. This made Li Shimin's mood particularly comfortable. Even someone as strong as Yuan Tiangang didn't expect that he could use the Chang and 8 rivers to solve this crisis. How could Yuan Tiangang be amazed? Li Shimin, who was in a good mood, fell asleep after a tender moment with Empress Zhangsun. This was the first good sleep he had since he knew that Guanlong was going to stir up trouble. However, as soon as he woke up from such a good sleep, he received a piece of disturbing bad news. Seeing that Li Shimin had woken up, Xiao Gizi helped him dress and eat. Then he said, "Your Majesty, Prime Minister Wei and Lord Zhangsun have been waiting outside the palace for a long time." Hearing this, Li Shimin didn't take it seriously and waved his hand. "Send them in and have a drink with me." A moment later, as soon as Wei Zheng and Zhang Sun Wuji entered the door, they knelt in front of Li Shimin with a plop. Li Shimin, who was in a good mood, knew that something had happened when they knelt. How could he be in the mood to eat at this time? Throwing away his chopsticks and dismissing all the palace maids and eunuchs, Li Shimin asked in a deep voice, "What happened? If nothing had happened, would they be like this? That would be like encountering a ghost." Wei Zheng and Zhang Sun Wuji looked at each other. Zhang Sun Wuji said, "Your Majesty, something has happened. The water of the Chang and 8 rivers can indeed carry ships, but I don't know what happened to the ships. I don't know if the water is too shallow or something else, but most of the ships are in trouble." "What happened?" "They sank." "How could it be? Didn't you say that they had been tested by the Navy? How could something have happened?" Li Shimin was angry. This was the last thing he wanted to hear. But at this time, something really happened. How could he not be worried? "Your Majesty, we've asked the Navy soldiers. They mentioned something about load capacity, water draft, and so on. I don't understand either, but the general idea is that the riverbed of the 8 rivers is full of stones. Large ships can't enter, and most of the small cargo ships would be pierced by the stones at the bottom of the river before they could even leave Chang'an's boundary. What? How is this possible? Then have the merchants' goods been saved? The goods are fine, but the joy they had just built was shattered once again. Some people even fainted on the spot. The two of them didn't dare to imagine what they were seeing. If His Majesty knew, then, but how could Li Shimin not imagine such a scene? Although they only concealed the worst part, how could he not know how miserable it was to hear such things from their mouths? Then, is there a way to solve this problem? Wei Zheng continued, I personally went to find Zhang Liang. He said that if we want to sail, we have to clear the dark stones in the entire river, or change to a light boat. But it's obvious that clearing the riverbed from here to the Yellow River is impossible. It's impossible to change to a light boat. Although a light boat is good, the cargo capacity is too small, and there aren't that many ships near Chang'an. Shallow water, dark stones. If they knew the importance of the 8 rivers earlier, this wouldn't have happened. They saw a glimmer of hope. But now, their hope was shattered again due to their negligence. How could Li Shimin not be worried? Is there any other way? Li Shimin rubbed his forehead and asked. This time, the two of them were silent. Li Shimin once again felt the world spinning around him. Is there no other way? Then, does God want to destroy the Tang dynasty? Li Shimin's anger couldn't help but surge again when he thought of the faces of the Guanlong group. Li Shimin didn't hide the matter this time, so everyone in Chang'an city knew that all the goods were out of Chang'an and through the waterway. The goods were out, but they were stranded outside Chang'an city. What's the use of that? In less than half a day, this matter would spread all over Chang'an city. By then, it wouldn't be a panic. In Li Shimin's mind, as long as there was a ship that could be recorded in the books, he went through them one by one. However, there wasn't a single ship that could be used. Or it could be said that it was too late. What should I do? Is there no one in the Tang dynasty who can solve the current situation? Is there no other genius in Chang'an city except for Brother Zhang Feng? Li Shimin was really anxious. Your Majesty, we've found the most experienced boatmen in Chang'an city, but they can't do anything. I think that perhaps only Brother Zhang Feng can solve this matter. Li Shimin was silent. Brother Zhang Feng. He slowly sold his guilt to Zhang Feng. Everything needs to be solved by Zhang Feng. Is there really no one in my court? In the end, Li Shimin thought about it, but there was really no one who could be useful. Sigh. Let's go and find Brother Zhang Feng. Chapter 275. In the tavern, Zhang Feng was once again like a dead fish, lying on the table and sleeping soundly. On the ground next to him, several lobsters jumped out of the wooden basin and jumped on the ground, but he didn't notice. And at this moment, 3 black shadows suddenly blocked the glaring sunlight at the entrance of the tavern. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. Looking at the 3 black shadows at the entrance, Zhang Feng scratched his head and said, The tavern is closed today. Brother Zhang Feng, why don't you receive me when I'm here? The familiar voice woke up Zhang Feng, who was about to go back to sleep. Yo, Laoli? Have you finished your business? I just heard that the goods in Chang'an city have all gone out through the river. Come, sit. I'm going to wash my face and wake up. Zhang Feng got up and went to the backyard to wash his face with cold water. Only then did he go to the front hall refreshed. Li Shimin admired the new furniture and clicked his tongue in wonder. Brother Zhang Feng, why did you remember to change the furniture? These things are worth a lot. Yes. These are all changed by your precious son. Zhang Feng spread his hands and pointed at the lobsters on the floor. He asked, Do you want to eat this thing or not? I'll get you a spicy crayfish. Whatever you say. Zhang Feng smiled. Then he went into the kitchen. How could he not see the worry on Li Shimin's face? What's going on? The ship had already left Chang'an. What else could go wrong? Could it be that they were blocked by the Guanlong group? That was also impossible. Guanlong also knew the importance of the matter. If they started a war with the Li dynasty, the ones who would benefit would either be the 5 families and 7 nobles, or the Tubo and Turkic barbarians. They wouldn't be so stupid. However, what exactly had gone wrong with the current situation? Zhang Feng didn't understand. She hurriedly prepared the crayfish and carried the basin out of the kitchen. That enticing aroma still made Li Shimin and the other two look at the bright red crayfish in the basin in surprise. This scene made Zhang Feng even more certain that Li Shimin was in real trouble this time. Zhang Feng didn't beat around the bush and asked directly, "Tell me, what trouble did you encounter this time?" Don't say that His Majesty declared war on Guanlong. As long as one isn't an idiot, no one will believe it. This, Li Shimin's face stiffened. Wei Zheng and Zhangsun Wuji's faces twitched as well. They stole a glance at Li Shimin. Li Shimin rubbed his hands and chuckled. He grabbed a lobster and started chewing without even peeling it. Well, there's indeed a problem this time, but it's not about the war with Guanlong. It's about the ship. The river has been cleared, but there's a problem with the ship. I don't know if it's because the ship can't bear the weight of the supplies or something else, but the bottom of the ship was pierced by the dark stones in the river after leaving Chang'an city. That's it? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin in surprise. He was very suspicious. Was the Five-Tooth warship such an awesome ship, bragging or something else? If that thing could be built, how could this thing be a problem? Li Shimin almost felt sweet in his heart. He was about to spit out a mouthful of old blood. That's it? Do you King know that this is making people worried to death? What else do you want? Wei Zheng and Zhangsun Wuji also twitched the corners of their mouths. Brother Zhang Feng was indeed awesome. How could he insult him in front of this master? Is this really okay? Don't you think about it? When you find out the emperor's identity, how will you King survive? They really wanted to see the scene when Zhang Feng found out everyone's identity. How exciting would that be? They didn't know if it was because they were familiar with Zhang Feng or something else, but now Li Shimin and the others were looking at Zhang Feng more and wanted to beat him up more and more. This guy was really too despicable. Every time something happened, he didn't talk about it properly. It was as if he hadn't spoken at all. He just had to show off. This was unbearable. Zhang Feng saw the strange expressions on the three people's faces. He touched his nose and coughed dryly. This matter can basically be solved. Now that you've found me, your hearts can be at ease. To put it bluntly, this is not a big deal. As long as it's not a war with Guanlong, this matter is not a big deal. But I have a question. Li Shimin asked carefully, "What question?" He was afraid of Zhang Feng. He was afraid that Zhang Feng would catch him off guard at some point. Zhang Feng peeled a prawn and dipped it in the sauce. Under everyone's fiery eyes, he chewed the prawn and said, "The previous dynasty could even make things like the Five-Tooth warship. I'm puzzled. This is such a simple thing. Can't you think of it? Just say it. What's the solution?" Zhangsun Wuji had completely lost his patience and asked directly. Zhang Feng shrugged and felt bored. "Well, it seems that you're really in trouble. Let me ask you, why didn't I see you yesterday? What were you doing?" They still didn't play by the rules. Li Shimin's face darkened. He said word by word, "Yesterday, we accompanied the emperor to think of a solution." "Did you see the emperor? Tell me, is His Majesty covered in dragon scales?" Puff. Chapter 276. Li Shimin wanted to hit someone. He really wanted to hit someone. During this period of time, his murderous intent was very strong. He really wanted to find someone to kill, but he couldn't. At this time, looking at Zhang Feng's face that deserved a beating, Li Shimin couldn't help but want to punch him in the face. Too despicable. Damn it, all the IQ could be turned into a negative number when it came to Zhang Feng. At this time, Li Shimin finally understood why he could mess with the son of King Jinla, the crown prince of Jinla. This guy was born a genius. This was a perfectly fine matter. So why did it suddenly involve whether or not he had dragon scales? Didn't you see clearly what I have on my body? However, Li Shimin could only criticize in his heart. He secretly thought that if Zhang Feng entered the imperial court in the future, he would teach him a good lesson. This guy, Brother Zhang Feng, let's talk about serious matters. Besides, have you ever seen anyone with scales on their body? Li Shimin said weakly. Zhang Feng's interest waned and he stopped talking. I was still wondering how His Majesty could know everything that I could think of. I thought His Majesty was really a divine dragon in the sky. It turns out that he's still a human. However, it's not bad that he has half of my ability. Today I, Zhang Feng, dare to bet that there's really no one other than His Majesty who can guess what I can guess. Zhang Feng's flattery made Li Shimin feel comfortable all over. He automatically ignored Zhang Feng's claim that he only had half of Zhang Feng's ability. He was just saying it and couldn't be taken seriously. By the way, brother Zhang Feng, you mentioned the five-toothed warship. Do you mean that you want to use the five-toothed warship to transport goods to Chang'an? But whether it's the Ba River or the Wei River, they can't carry such a heavy ship. Moreover, there are stones everywhere under the riverbed. There's no way to do it. Li Shimin didn't want to retreat anymore and went straight to the point. He was afraid that Zhang Feng would start rambling again. That's easy. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and wiped his hands. The five-tooth warship definitely won't be able to come, but as you said, there are no ships that can transport these goods out. Then tell me, how much water does the five-tooth warship need? What is draft? Li Shimin looked around. Zhang Sun Wuji and Wei Jing also shook their heads in confusion. He couldn't understand at all. Zhang Feng slapped his head. Only then did he remember that if people in this era knew how much water they needed to eat, they would be really awesome. But forget it. Let's put it this way, which river can the five-tooth warship reach at most? Li Shimin understood this time. Zhang Sun Wuji continued, if it's not loaded, it can reach Yongzhou. But that's the limit. However, most of our goods have to go around the Qinling Mountains and pass through Jingzhou to reach Liangzhou. Large ships can't go up there at all. Moreover, the Qinling Mountains are steep and there are many stones in the river. I remember that there was a rainstorm a few days ago. Did the Wei River that passes through the Qinling Mountains rise? Zhang Feng's brainless question instantly shut Zhang Sun Wuji up. There was no room for discussion. Zhang Feng frowned and said to himself, if that's the case, it's indeed difficult to travel on large ships. But if we change it to a small boat, won't it be different? The weight of a small boat is small, and Chang'an doesn't have that many light boats. This method won't work. We've discussed it before. It still won't work. Zhang Feng frowned. After drinking a mouthful of wine, he took a piece of bark from the table and placed it on the wine bowl. Instantly, everyone's eyes focused on the piece of bark. Everything about this table is good. But why is it all bark under the table? Old Li, I don't know if your son bought me inferior goods? Li Shimin rolled his eyes. Let's not talk about other things. Just take out a little bit of the stuff from Prince Shenla and you can exchange everything here with pure gold. Isn't this table always like this? What does it have to do with what we're talking about? Li Shimin was going crazy. Zhang Feng pursed his lips. All right, your son is awesome. The things he gives away are the best. Then, let's not talk nonsense. Take a look at this bark. What do you think? Are you sure you can't understand it? Li Shimin couldn't help narrowing his eyes at Zhang Feng's last question. You're talking about making a raft out of bark? And then carrying goods out? Get lost. Zhang Feng glared at Li Shimin. He said resentfully, when you go out, don't say that you're Zhang Feng's brother. Why are you so stupid? This is a wine bowl. Can I put anything else in it? What I mean is, you can make it into a raft. A bamboo raft. Or some kind of wood with high buoyancy. Make it into a big raft. Then, do you understand? I'm really doubting your IQ. You want to deal with His Majesty with this? You're lucky to have met me, Zhang Feng. Otherwise, you'd be cheated so badly.